Chapter 496. The barbarian race, the voodoo race, the feather race, and the Asmodeans were not harmonious. They had a common enemy, but they were different races after all. Also, during the War of 10,000 Races, the four alien races often fought against each other. But this time, the four alien races had joined forces. Outside the Tower of Delicacy, warriors of the four alien races were everywhere. Luli could see with psychic power that there were at least 3,000 alien races. Warriors of the four alien races minded their own business. They each occupied a spot, surrounded the Tower of Delicacy, and soon began their attack. Each alien race sent out 20 to 30 powerful warriors to bombard the tower. The barbarian race smashed at the tower with their bronze hammers. The feather race shot out arrows, the Asmodeans used daggers, and the voodoo race shot out rays of blue light. Buzzing. The tower glowed. Despite being attacked by nearly 100 powerful warriors, it didn't shake much. The tower was glaring, and some mysterious runes were looming, fending off all the attacks. Something is wrong. Lee's eyes glowed. Warriors of the four alien races were in harmony. Their goals were clear, and they were orderly. Clearly, this was premeditated. Have they all learned about Jiang Qiling? Luli thought about it and decided this was the only plausible explanation. Emperor of Heaven Reverse had given her divine energy. Jiang Qiling was likely to become the next chosen warrior of a human race. Therefore, the four alien races were working together to kill her. Chosen warrior. She was a being that could defeat all the powerful warriors of the four alien races. In history, every time a chosen warrior was born, the four alien races would suffer great losses. They would not be able to recover for hundreds of years. Once the Asmodeans were almost wiped out. In the end, the Asmodeans survived thanks to a treasure left by their ancestors. Therefore, the four alien races would never allow a chosen warrior of the human race to emerge. Once a chosen warrior was found, they would try their best to kill her. The four alien races must have sent more warriors to the small battlefield to kill Jiang Qiling at all costs. As for how they knew about Jiang Qiling, there must be a traitor among the human race who told the royal families of the four alien races about Jiang Qiling in a special way. Li and Jiang Qiling could not change the situation. If they didn't think of a way, they would be smashed into pieces. Warriors over the age of 30 could not enter the small battlefield. Patriarchs of the demon-slaying hall and Jiang Tianshun would not be able to do anything even if they learned of the situation. They had to rely on themselves. The only fortunate thing was that there were no Ren Huangs among the warriors of the four clans outside. There were no geniuses among the four alien races. The most powerful one should be at the peak of the noble lord realm. It was not easy to find geniuses. Over the past 1,000 years, the human race only had one, Lu Ren Huang, who reached the human sovereign realm at the age of 20. Luli had never heard of anyone below the age of 30 reaching the human sovereign realm. Sob, sob, sob. A young lady from the Palace of Peaceful Heavens suddenly burst into tears. Luli turned around to look at them. Many of their eyes were filled with despair and fear. Why are you crying? Jiang Qiling threw them a cold glance and scolded. The moment you entered the small battlefield, you should have been prepared to die. Whoever cries and disturbs the army's morale, I will send them on their way right now. Jiang Qiling's threat was effective. The young lady stopped crying at once, but there was still fear in her eyes. Before they came in, they had known that they were here to protect Jiang Qiling and die for her. Before they came in, they might have been shouting their slogans. But when it came to the end, they would be afraid. They were born in big families, and they hadn't had enough of a good life. They all had a bright future ahead of them. Many of them were single, so they didn't want to die. The desire to survive and selfishness were all human instincts. Luli understood. He turned to Jiang Qiling and asked, "How long do you think the Tower of Delicacy can withstand the attacks?" Jiang Qiling closed her eyes to sense. She nodded and said, "If the enemies don't increase their attacks and no human sovereign realm warriors show up, 10 days should be enough." Okay. Luli walked into the only room and said at the door, I need to cultivate for a couple of days to try to improve my abilities. Jiang Qiling, you should cultivate as well. If you can release divine energy, we might have a chance to survive. Jiang Hu, try to improve yourselves. Now that the situation is like this, fear is meaningless. The more we can improve, the more hope we will have. Somehow, they were relieved to see how calm Lu Li was. Jiang Qiling was panicking, but she calmed down soon. She followed Lu Li into the room and said, Jiang Hu, we will go in and cultivate. Kill anyone who tries to do anything. Don't despair. I am the future chosen warrior. Have you ever heard that a chosen warrior can die? Everyone's eyes lit up as a glimmer of hope ignited in their hearts. Lu Li and Jiang Qiling walked into the room and closed the door. Jiang Hu and the others checked with psychic power. Realizing that the Tower of Delicacy could not be breached anytime soon, they made up their minds and went into closed-door cultivation. Boom, boom, boom. Talk, 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 bang, bang, bang. The attacks were still going on. The Tower of Delicacy was glowing. Many warriors of the 4 alien races were outside in silence. There was no end to them. Being surrounded by so many alien races was stressful. The alien races were disciplined. Clearly, they were led by royal family warriors. They would not stop until the Tower of Delicacy was breached. Lu Li went into closed-door cultivation as soon as he entered the small room. He forced himself to calm down. In times of life and death, everyone's desire for survival would be stimulated and their potential would be stimulated. People were forced to do so. This saying was not without reason. Therefore, the next few days were particularly important. If he was lucky, Lu Li's abilities could improve by leaps and bounds. It all depended on his luck. Jiang Qiling walked in and sat down next to Lu Li. She was never afraid of death. She would be content to die with Lu Li. Therefore, she was quite calm at the moment. Soon, she entered a trance and began to study the usage of divine energy. Jiang Qiling had a clear direction, but Lu Li didn't know what to study. Soul attacks were a good direction. If his soul attacks could be 10 times or even 100 times stronger, he could kill a group of people easily. The thing was, his soul was too weak. His psychic power was limited, which limited him. Lu Li rejected the idea of studying soul attacks. His realm could not be improved either. The only way left for him was to study profound meanings. If his profound meanings could be improved, his abilities would soar as well. There were 2 paths to study profound meanings. One was to learn new profound meanings, and the other was to further study the profound meanings he had already learned. Lu Li chose the second path. He didn't study the mirror image profound meaning. No matter how many clones he had, they wouldn't be of much help. He chose the speed profound meaning. If his speed could be further improved, he could take Jiang Qiling with him and run away easily. Tornado, wind force, speed profound meaning? The tornado in the area of demons came to Lu Li's mind. He tried hard to recall, to decipher, to deduce, and to search for the laws and truths in heaven and earth. With everyone in closed-door cultivation, the pavilion of delicacy became quieter. It was a stark contrast to the heated and murderous scene outside. Chapter 497. Time flew by. 5 days passed in a blink of an eye. The news that a large number of alien races were gathered here was spread out. Someone noticed something was wrong. They retreated at once and passed the message to others. They thought that the alien races were going to work together to wipe out the humans and attack the base camp of the human race. Many humans gathered together, waiting for the alien races to come. They were ready to defend the base camp to the death. Gradually, however, they realized something was not right. The young masters and young ladies didn't react when they were informed. Ji Mengtian, Lu Xuan, Yang Xian, and Yi Luo didn't even gather together. They didn't even try to gather human warriors to fight against the alien races. On the 4th day, a piece of news was spread out. A warrior from a 7th-rank family had found out why the 4 alien races were gathered together through his bloodline. It was said that there was a tower in the middle of the 4 alien races, and they were attacking the tower constantly. This pagoda was quickly discovered. Because this pagoda had been used many times by the Jiang family, It could barely be considered a demigod artifact. This pagoda was named the Linglong Pagoda by the Jiang family, and it was quite famous in the Central Plains. Some people had seen Jiang Qiling and the others going there. Some human warriors risked their lives to get closer. They could hear the loud noises from the distance. It was almost confirmed Jiang Qiling and the others were under attack. She was hiding in the Tower of Delicacy, and the 4 alien races were trying to kill her. Warriors from the families at the northern Central Plains were panicking. They went to Jimeng Tian, Yi Luo, Yang Xian, and Lu Xuan, begging them to gather the human warriors and save Jiang Qiling. Jimeng Tian, Lu Xuan, Yang Xian, and Dai Feiyu finally gathered together. They sent out an order to gather all the human warriors to attack the 4 alien races and save Jiang Qiling. However, the human warriors were scattered. It was hard to gather them together. What was more, many human warriors would not listen to orders. They were not familiar with Jiang Qiling. Why would they risk their lives to save her? Warriors from the families of the northern Central Plains were panicking. It would take 10 days or half a month for Jimeng Tian to gather the thousands of warriors. By then, the Pavilion of Delicacy would have been destroyed. Jiang Qiling and the others would have been gone. Boom, 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 boom. In the north-central region of the small world, the rumbling sounds continued to ring out. The experts of the 4 clans rotation sect attacked without stopping. The light of the Linglong Pagoda had weakened a lot, which made the 4 clans' martial artists very excited. They were more and more convinced that if they continued to attack, the pagoda would definitely be broken. Any treasure needed energy to support it, especially this kind of defensive treasure. Once the energy inside was exhausted, the pagoda would naturally break. Many of Jiang Hu and the others did not cultivate in seclusion anymore. They knew they would not be able to comprehend anything in a few days, and their strength would not improve. Their hearts were restless. How could they calm down? These days, they were getting more and more depressed. They were in a constant state of anxiety. If it were not for the fact that Jiang Qiling had divine energy and Lu Li was powerful, they would have lost their minds. In the small room, Lu Li and Jiang Qiling sat side by side. They hadn't stopped cultivating for 5 days. They had been cultivating hard, trying to improve their abilities. In a life and death crisis, a person's potential was limitlessly unleashed. At least, Lu Li felt like his brain was working at a much faster speed, and he could understand many things at once. The thing was, time was too short. He had reached a bottleneck in his profound meaning. The 5 days didn't provide him with much progress. Generally speaking, profound meanings were divided into beginner, expert, and great achievement. Lu Li's speed, profound meaning, should be at the expert level. It would be hard for him to reach the great achievement in a short time. Profound meanings were the laws of nature, the ultimate truth of the world. If everyone could learn profound meanings overnight, then the number of humans who could learn profound meanings would be as many as the hairs on a cow. For many people, it would take them years or even decades to go from beginner to great achievement of profound meanings. Gurgle, Lu Li was tired. He stopped studying and wanted to take a rest. All of a sudden, he was alarmed by a strange noise. He opened his eyes in curiosity, only to see nothing but white. Jiang Qiling jumped up like a kitten whose tail was stepped on. She pulled up her dress in a hurry, looked at Lu Li with a blushed face, and said angrily, "Lu Li, you are going to die. Aren't you cultivating?" Lu Li looked at the chamber pot on the ground and saw the light yellow liquid in it. He understood immediately. He turned around in embarrassment and said with shame, "I am sorry. I just woke up. I didn't mean it." Jiang Qiling said nothing. She put the chamber pot into her interspatial ring and covered her face in silence. The atmosphere in the room became awkward and depressing. Gradually, there was a surge of charm. Lu Li and Jiang Qiling's faces were getting redder and redder. Lu Li was thick-skinned. After a while, he cleared his throat and asked as if nothing had happened, "Jiang Qiling, have you made any progress these days?" Jiang Qiling shook her head after a moment of silence and said, "Not much. The divine energy is in me, but I cannot use it. It seems that the divine energy does not belong to me. I cannot use it. Lu Li, am I useless? Lu Li's heart was weighed down. Anything that could be associated with the word divine must be powerful. If she could use the divine energy, her abilities would soar. However, she could not use it at the moment. He could not help her with this. The divine energy was in her body. He could not see or touch it. How would he help her? How about you? Jiang Qiling walked over, sat down next to Lu Li, and asked, "Have you made any progress?" "Not really. I don't have enough time." Lu Li shook his head and said, "My foundation is weak. It is hard for me to improve my abilities in a short time." Jiang Qiling tilted her head, looked at Lu Li, and said, "Lu Li, I think we're going to die here. Actually, I am not afraid to die with you." "I don't want to die." Lu Li raised his head. His eyes were filled with unwillingness. He coldly said, "I have too many things to do. I have to find my sister, save my parents, saved by Qiushue. I don't want to die. I cannot die." Looking at the blue veins popping out on Lu Li's face and his ferocious expression, Jiang Qiling felt sorry for him. Suddenly, she lowered her head and said nothing. After the time for one incense stick to burn, she looked up again with determination in her eyes. Buzzing. The ring on her hand glowed as some dried meat and 2 bottles of pink wine appeared. She handed some of the dried meat and 1 bottle to Lu Li and said, "Eat something. There is no rush. We have 5 more days. We can try harder." Lu Li nodded. He took some bites of the dried meat and drank some wine. When the fine wine entered his throat, it didn't feel like strong wine. Instead, it had a special taste. It seemed like there was a slight medicinal taste. "What is this? Why don't you drink the bloody rose anymore?" Lu Li asked with a frown. Jiang Qiling said casually, "This is a kind of liquid. It can increase the strength of souls. Don't waste it. Drink it now." Lu Li didn't hold back when he heard that it could increase the strength of his soul. He finished the dried meat in a few bites and then drank a bottle of pink wine. Something is wrong. Soon, Lu Li sensed something was wrong. A surge of lust surged out from his abdomen. His mouth was dry and his lust was running wild. He looked at Jiang Qiling in shock. She grinned like a fox and said, "Lu Li, this liquid is called the descent of immortals. Even immortals can't control their lust after drinking it. So don't hold back. Before you die, let me be a real woman, okay? *T, you drugged me?" Chapter 498. To Lu Li, Jiang Qiling had always been a slut. From the first time they met, she offered Qian crystals to buy a night with him. Then, he ran into her fooling around with other men. What was more, the rumors had left a bad impression on Lu Li. Lu Li was deeply influenced by Lu Ling. He was more traditional when it came to men and women. He never got involved with slutty women. Madame Yin had seduced him many times. He could have done whatever he wanted to her, and he wouldn't have to take any responsibility. But he didn't because of his obsession. As a matter of fact, relationships in the world had always been messy. Powerful warriors had too much power, and they could decide the life and death of many people. Therefore, beautiful women were easy to get for them. They would often search for beautiful women. Yu Huashun, for example, had many concubines. Bai Lung and Du Zheng also had many wives and concubines. Relatively speaking, women were the weaker ones in the world. They had to rely on men. Therefore, many women were promiscuous in their private lives. Madame Yin, for example, had had sex with many men. Jiang Qiling's behavior changed Lu Li's opinion of her. That being said, Lu Li didn't have many romantic feelings for her. They were just friends. Sometimes, Lu Li would be tempted, but he would be lying if he said he had no grudge about Jiang Qiling's past. The 4 alien races were besieging them. Their lives were hanging by a thread, and they could die at any time. But Jiang Qiling had tricked him and fed him the aphrodisiac. Lu Li was annoyed. He thought Jiang Qiling didn't know what to do. Once they had sex, their relationship had changed. The lust coming from his abdomen made Lu Li's eyes redden. He was short of breath, and his face was filled with lust. He suppressed the urge to push Jiang Qiling to the ground and do whatever he wanted. He sat with his legs crossed and mobilized Xian energy, trying to force the effect out. However, the effect was strong, and it was dispersed in every muscle and bone of Lu Li. It was impossible to force it out quickly. Jiang Qiling walked over with a smile. She leaned on Lu Li's back and stroked his strong chest with one hand. She moved closer to Lu Li's ear and whispered, "It is not going to work. The descent of immortals is the strongest aphrodisiac of the Central Plains. Not even human sovereign realm warriors can force it out, let alone you. Lu Li, I will not hurt you. Please take care of me." The beauty was as beautiful as jade. The amazing sensation from his back was like a fuse that ignited the desire buried in Lu Li's heart. From his throat came a beast-like growl. He pulled Jiang Qiling over and placed her on his knees. Jiang Qiling looked at Lu Li. Her cheeks were blushing and her breaths were short. She opened and closed her mouth, and her breasts were moving up and down. This was a scene that could drive men crazy. "You forced me to do this," Lu Li yelled. He tore off her robe, and soon, her clothes were all torn off. She had become a skin lamb, very tempting. Lu Li, Jiang Qiling drank the descent of immortals as well. Her breaths were short. She put her arms around Lu Li's neck and kissed him. Two lips pressed together, two tongues intertwined. Heavenly thunder and earthly fire. He could no longer control himself. The room was not big. Fortunately, the inhibition formation was activated. Otherwise, the strange sounds in the room would be heard by everyone outside. They were entangled together and could not be separated. In the dim room, a man and a woman became one and began the most primitive and intense activity. The descent of immortals was indeed the strongest aphrodisiac. Not only could it stimulate people's desire, it could also prolong a man's combat abilities. Lu Li and Jiang Qiling had sex for a long time before they finally hugged each other tightly and calmed down. Phew. Lu Li breathed heavily. He felt like he was about to collapse. Just now, he felt he was not in a clear mind. He was just doing it out of instinct. He managed to wake up after the time for 2 incense sticks to burn. He opened his eyes in a daze. What he saw was a pretty face that was extremely pale. Jiang Qiling had fallen asleep. Her eyebrows were knitted together, and she seemed to be in pain. Lu Li woke up at once. He sat up abruptly and glanced around. Soon, he noticed something else. There was a huge piece of white cloth under them. Jiang Qiling must have put it there for fear that the ground would be too dirty. The white cloth was not the problem. The problem was there was blood on the white cloth. Blood. Lu Li looked at Jiang Qiling's thigh. He could see some dry blood. He was shocked. He shook Jiang Qiling and said, "Qiling, wake up! Wake up!" Jiang Qiling opened her eyes weakly. Looking into Lu Li's shocked eyes, she forced a smile and said, "I am not as slutty as you think. I am clean. Lu Li, you are so rough. I am in pain. Clean." Lu Li's eyes were wide open as if he had heard the funniest joke in the world. She was a famous slut at the Central Plains, and she was still a virgin. This was the biggest joke in the world. Jiang Qiling forced a smile, but didn't explain. She took a deep breath and closed her eyes. Her eyelashes fluttered, and she said, "Lu Li, don't worry so much. Go back to cultivation. I have passed all my divine energy to you, and I have given you more than half of my soul energy. I'm so tired. I want to sleep. I will leave the rest to you. If you cannot take me away, please die with me." With that said, Jiang Qiling closed her eyes and passed out. Lu Li's eyes were wide open again. He was shocked. Divine energy? Soul energy? Didn't Jiang Qiling want to have sex with him before she died? How did she transfer her divine power to him? How did she transfer her soul power to? Lu Li sat in a daze for a while. Then he put Jiang Qiling on the ground carefully and sat with his legs crossed to check himself. A moment later, his body shook, and his eyes opened abruptly. There was indeed some unknown energy in his body. His soul pond had grown bigger, and his soul power was abundant. He was so occupied with sex that he didn't know that Jiang Qiling had transferred all her divine energy to him without him noticing. Silly girl. Lu Li looked at Jiang Qiling, who was still in a coma, guilt and self-blame written all over his face. It was okay that he had wronged Jiang Qiling. What was more, he didn't care about her feelings at all. Jiang Qiling had to endure the rough whipping and fight against the effect of the elixir. At the same time, she had to use a secret skill to transfer divine energy and more than half of her soul energy to him. "I'm sorry, I am so sorry," Luli murmured, blaming himself. He took out a pillow and a cup to cover Jiang Qiling up. Then he took out a pellet and fed it to her before he forced himself to calm down. He could not let Jiang Qiling down. She must know that she could not use divine energy, and that was why she tried to transfer so much soul energy to him. He must use the remaining time to figure out how to use divine energy. Also, he must find a way to make soul attacks more powerful. The hardest thing to bear was the favor of a beauty. Chapter 499. The divine energy was supposed to belong to him. However, when Emperor of Heaven Reverse's book glowed, Lu Li's silver dragon mark resisted. In the end, the divine energy was given to Jiang Qiling. Now, by chance, the divine energy was back. Lu Li was confused. The divine energy was in his body, but the silver dragon mark in his soul pond and fate wheel had no reaction. Didn't it resist last time? Why not this time? How should he use the divine energy? Lu Li focused on the strange energy in his body. There wasn't much of it, only about the amount of Xian energy Lu Li could cultivate for several hours. If he were to use it directly, it would be pointless. How many people could he kill? Lu Li thought about it and decided to see if he could absorb it into his soul pond. Jiang Qiling had given him a lot of soul energy. His soul was weak to begin with. Now that it was strengthened, he could try to make his soul attacks more powerful. If the divine energy could be integrated into his soul energy, then his soul attacks would be horrifying. Lu Li had always been a man of swift action. He began to pour the divine energy into his soul at once. Inside his soul, Lu Li didn't pour in too much divine energy at once. Instead, he moved several strands of divine energy toward his soul pond. Buzzing, the silver dragon mark on his soul pond suddenly glowed. Then, the divine energy that was approaching the soul pond surged toward the silver dragon mark involuntarily. Then it was all absorbed by the silver dragon mark. More than that, the divine energy in his soul surged toward the silver dragon mark uncontrollably. All the divine energy in Lu Li's body surged toward his brain. In the end, it was all absorbed by the silver dragon mark. SH*T, SH*T, SH*T. Lu Li almost cursed. Last time at the Gargoyle Mountain, when he absorbed energy from soul crystals, a lot of it was absorbed by the silver dragon mark. That was not a big deal. But divine energy was precious. It was his life-saving straw. If it were not for the fact that the silver dragon mark was in his soul pond, he would have dug it out. However, the silver dragon mark had absorbed all the divine energy. What else could he do? Lu Li kept looking into his soul pond, hoping that the silver dragon mark would take pity on him and return the divine energy to him. Buzzing, the silver dragon mark continued to shine for a full hour, and finally, there was some movement. Strands of pure, white energy surged out from the mark and entered his soul pond. Lu Li's soul trembled and he was trembling, because the pure white energy had fused with his soul energy directly. His soul pond was getting stronger at a speed visible to the naked eye. Lu Li held his breath, not daring to move for fear that he might interrupt the energy surging out from the silver dragon mark. Time ticked by. The silver dragon mark kept releasing white energy. His soul pond was getting stronger and stronger. After a full hour, the silver dragon mark finally dimmed and no longer showed any signs of activity. Oh my God, Lu Li checked himself, and then again to make sure that his soul pond was several times larger and his soul energy had increased by more than 10 times. Then he opened his eyes and took a deep breath. He rubbed his face and looked at Jiang Qiling, who was sleeping next to him. After making sure that this was not a dream, he grinned. Even though he didn't know exactly what had happened, he was sure of one thing. His soul was strong now, definitely above the noble lord realm, or even stronger. Also, he felt that after the white energy merged with his soul energy, it was different from regular soul energy. It was as if there was a qualitative leap. The silver dragon mark absorbed the divine power, refined it, and changed it into another kind of energy for me. Luli came up with an inference, and this was the only explanation that made sense. Somehow, he understood why Jiang Qiling could not use divine energy. Was it because divine energy could not be used by ordinary people? Did the silver dragon mark know that Lu Li could not use divine energy, so it absorbed divine energy and refined it for him? Let me try soul attack, and then learn more powerful soul attack methods. Whatever the reason was, it didn't matter anymore. After the time for one incense stick to burn, Lu Li calmed himself down and went into closed-door cultivation. On the flat ground in the middle of the pocket world, more than 1,500 martial artists had gathered, and there was still an endless stream of martial artists gathering. Many tents were set up nearby. In the middle were Ji Mingtian, Yang Xian, Dai Feiyu, Lu Xuan, and Lu Enai. Yi Luo was nowhere to be seen. Nobody knew where he went. Warriors from the families of the northern Central Plains kept coming to see the young masters and young ladies, begging them to go and rescue Jiang Qiling. However, Yang Xian turned them down on the grounds that the number of warriors was too small. Yang Xian said that he had sent someone to check. The number of warriors from the 4 alien races had reached 4,000. There were only 1,000 warriors here. They would be courting death if they went. Therefore, they had to wait for more human warriors to gather before taking action. Warriors from the families of the northern Central Plains had to wait patiently while they sent people to ask for help. Many were sitting on pins and needles in their tents. Every day felt like a year. With each passing day, their hearts were weighed down. Even though more human warriors were gathering, only 200 or 300 would come every day. It would take at least 10 days or half a month to gather 4,000 warriors. Jiang Qiling was the chosen warrior in the future. If she died here, Jiang Hua would tear them apart one by one when they left. 4 days later, more than 2,000 human warriors had gathered. Yang Xian, Ji Mingtian, Dai Feiyu, Lu Xuan, and Lu Enai finally walked out of the tents. Yang Xian waved his hand and said, "Let's go. We can't wait any longer. We have fewer warriors, but we cannot just watch Lady Jiang die. Everyone, please do your best to defeat the allied forces of the 4 alien races and save Lady Jiang. Let's go." Warriors from the families of the northern Central Plains rushed out. The army marched to the north in a formidable array. The more than 2,000 warriors created the momentum of an army of more than 10,000. Lu Lin and Lu Hongyu were in the army. They looked at Lu Xuan, Lu Enai, and Yang Xian, who were running in front of them, with a mocking smile. It would take at least 2 to 3 days to get to where Lu Li and Jiang Qiling were. Lu Li and Jiang Qiling had been surrounded for 9 days. By the time they got there, Lu Li and Jiang Qiling would be cold. "Lu Li, that idiot," Lu Hongyu murmured. She said unhappily, "Didn't I tell you Luo to remind him? How come he is still surrounded? Did that idiot Yi Luo not make it in time? Don't blame young Master Yi." Lu Lin sighed and said, "He has done his best to warn Lu Li at the risk of his life. If it were not for the fact that he loves you, he would not offend Yang Xian, Lu Enai, Ji Mingtian, and Dai Feiyu to help Lu Li. We have done what we can. It is up to fate whether Lu Li can survive or not." Lu Hongyu was still angry. She looked at Lu Xuan and the others in the distance and said in a low voice, "Lu Xuan thinks this is a flawless plan. If Uncle Renhuang comes back or our family patriarch wakes up, Lu Xuan will not be able to escape death." "Stop it," Lu Lin scolded coldly. "There is no proof. It is pointless to say more. If Lu Xuan knows, we will not be able to leave the small battlefield." Lu Hongyu snorted angrily. She looked to the north and murmured again, "Lu Li, you must survive. I don't want the Lu family to be led to destruction by a vicious person like Lu Xuan. P.S. I recommend a good friend's fantasy book, Godfeng Qin Yang's Ling Tian War Sovereign. This book is always on the sales charts, and there's no need to say anything about its quality. It's a rare work of art. If there's a shortage of books, you could go search for it. Chapter 500. Bang, bang, bang. Outside the Tower of Delicacy, the attacks were getting fiercer. The glow of the Tower of Delicacy was dimming, and it was about to be broken. Naturally, their attacks became more aggressive. Warriors of the 4 alien races had been lazy these days. Now, they were nervous. They all had weapons in their hands, ready to fight at any time. Once the tower was broken, the warriors inside would try to break out. The royal family leaders of the 4 alien races had ordered that no one was allowed to escape. They must kill them at all costs. That was right. Originally, royal family disciples of the 4 alien races didn't come to the small battlefield. But now, each of the 4 alien races had sent one, and their target was Jiang Qiling. Lily was right. The 4 alien races would not allow the chosen warriors of the human race to grow. Whoosh, from the south, a feather race warrior flew over and whispered something to a feather race prince with a crown on his head. The feather race prince bellowed and sent out more powerful feather race warriors to strengthen their attacks. The news was sent to the other 3 alien races. Royal family disciples of the 3 alien races sent out powerful warriors to attack the Tower of Delicacy. Scouts of the feather race had sensed that a large group of human warriors were coming their way. They were still far away, and it would take them 2 or 3 days to get here. That being said, royal family disciples of the 4 alien races preferred to avoid unnecessary trouble. The 4 alien races all sent out powerful warriors to strengthen their attacks. Every time the Tower of Delicacy was attacked, it would tremble. How come they are not out yet? Jiang Hu and the others kept looking into the room. Lu Li and Jiang Qiling had been in there for 9 days. Their only hope was the 2 of them. The inhibition formation of the tower was about to be broken, but the 2 of them were doing nothing. How could they not be worried? Boom! All of a sudden, the Tower of Delicacy trembled. Blood drained from their faces. They activated their Xian energy, and bloodline marks appeared on their necks. They were ready to risk their lives. But the Tower of Delicacy only trembled for a bit. It didn't crack or explode. Everyone was relieved. After a while, the door of the room was opened. Jiang Qiling walked out alone. She had been sleeping for several days. She was still pale and sick. She felt she was floating as if she could fall at any time. Lady Qi, a young lady from the Palace of Peaceful Heavens, went over to help her. Jiang Hu asked with a frown, "Lady Qi, what is wrong?" "I'm okay." Jiang Qiling forced a smile and said, "I was hurt by the backfire. I am afraid I will have to disappoint you." Jiang Qiling seemed to be unreliable. Jiang Hu made up his mind. He made up his mind and said, "Lady, let us all out. We will fight our way out and draw the attention of the enemies. Let young Master Lu take us and run away, whose death is not to be regretted. As long as Miss can live, who will have no regrets." "Yes." One of the Qin clan's martial artists nodded and said, "Let's split up and fight with our lives on the line. We'll attract the enemy's firepower and allow young Master Lu to escape with young Mistress Qi. Young Master Lu's speed is so fast, you'll definitely be able to break out." "All right." The group of people pondered for a moment, then nodded. Their eyes were filled with the determination to die. Since they were going to die anyway, they decided to fight with a bang. If they could save Jiang Qiling, at least their deaths would be worthwhile. They could gain benefits for their families. Humans are very strange things. They are obviously afraid of death, but when it comes to a situation where death is inevitable, they are more willing to throw caution to the wind. For the past few days, they had been living in fear. That kind of life was worse than death. Now that they had made the decision, they felt relieved. Jiang Qiling didn't say anything. She closed her eyes and sensed for a while. After a while, she opened her eyes and said, "One more day. The Tower of Delicacy will not be able to hold on for much longer. If Luli can't find a way by then, we will do as you say." "Okay." They nodded. They sat down with their legs crossed to cultivate Xian energy. They wanted their essence, qi, and spirit to be at the peak for the fight tomorrow. Jiang Qiling glanced at the others and walked into the room. Luli was still in closed-door cultivation. He didn't even notice that Jiang Qiling had come and gone. Jiang Qiling sat next to him with her legs crossed. Her eyes were filled with love. She took 2 soul-nurturing pellets and didn't cultivate. She just sat there and looked at Luli quietly, as if she would never get tired of looking at him. As time went on, the tower was shaking more and more violently. Jiang Hu and the others couldn't cultivate anymore. They had to sit quietly, stay alert, and be ready to attack at any time. Jiang Qiling would check the Tower of Delicacy from time to time. She knew very well that the energy inside was running out. Soon, the Tower of Delicacy would be broken. After half a day, Jiang Qiling walked out. She handed each of them a pellet and explained, "This is the poison protection pellet. For 2 hours, the toxins of the voodoo race will not hurt you. But you must be careful of the bewitching insects of the voodoo race. The pellets can protect you from toxins, but not bewitching insects." They took over the pellets in silence. They understood that they couldn't count on Luli anymore. They had to fight to the death. Fight to the death. Jiang Hu put his hands on his chest and shouted solemnly. The others did the same. They stood there in silence and looked at Jiang Qiling. Jiang Hu said, "Young lady, we are ready. We can be teleported out at any time." "Okay." Jiang Qiling nodded and said, "Your parents will be my parents from now on, provided that I can get out." They nodded and said nothing more. Jiang Qiling went back into her room. If Luli didn't wake up, she would have to take him with her and fight to the death. The energy of the Tower of Delicacy was running out. Boom! Right at that moment, the interspatial ring on Li's hand suddenly glowed. Then a huge coffin appeared in the room. The coffin was so big that it was stuck. Jiang Qiling was startled. "Luli, what are you doing? You scare me," Jiang Qiling shouted. Luli opened his eyes and looked at her apologetically. Then he grabbed the saber on the coffin of the Dragon King and pulled it out. Buzzing. With a glare, Luli pulled the saber out easily. The interspatial ring on Li's hand glowed, and the coffin of the Dragon King disappeared from the room. Luli rubbed the blade of the saber and said to himself, "Good saber." Jiang Qiling had good eyes. She glanced over and said, "Holy Great Xian artifact? Luli, how about it? Are you sure you can get out?" "Let's wait." Luli didn't answer. He sat with his legs crossed and started to consume the divine weapon of Dragon King. He mobilized Xian energy, and the saber glowed brighter and brighter. An hour later, Luli opened his eyes. His eyes were glowing. He exhaled, stood up, and asked, "Qiling, are you okay?" Jiang Qiling blushed. She didn't dare to look into his eyes. She lowered her head and said, "I'm fine, okay." Luli put the divine weapon of Dragon King back into his interspatial ring. He held Jiang Qiling's hand and walked out of the room. Outside, he scanned the crowd with his fierce eyes and said, "Is everyone ready? If so, please follow me. I will lead you and we can fight our way out." Everyone's eyes glowed. Luli's confidence ignited a glimmer of hope. It was as if a gate was opened from hell to the human world. Boom! The pavilion of delicacy trembled again. Everyone was shaking. A glint of coldness rose in Li's eyes as he shouted, "Jiang Qiling, teleport us out and put away the Tower of Delicacy. Everyone, get on my fate wheel and stand behind me. Protect yourselves. I will take care of the rest." Chapter 501. Boom, boom, boom. On the ground, more than 100 alien races had formed a circle and were still attacking the Tower of Delicacy. There was no more light outside the tower. Every attack would shake the Tower of Delicacy. Warriors of the 4 alien races attacked, even more fiercely. They had been attacking for days, and the Tower of Delicacy was about to break. Naturally, they were excited. Hundreds of warriors surrounded the Tower of Delicacy with weapons in their hands, ready to attack any human that dashed out. Buzzing. Right at that moment, the Tower of Delicacy glowed. 12 humans appeared in midair, and then the Tower of Delicacy disappeared. They were out. The alien races outside the Tower of Delicacy were filled with killing intent. The more than 100 at the periphery waved their weapons and attacked the 12 humans. Whoosh, a giant four-tiered fate wheel appeared, and everyone rushed into it. Then, a pale-faced woman with a black mark on her neck appeared. Butterflies filled the sky and flew in all directions, rushing into the minds of hundreds of mutated tribe members. Attack indiscriminately. Luli yelled. He took out a saber and poured Xian energy into it. The saber's blade grew longer and larger until it was more than 100 feet long. The tip of the blade was 10 feet wide as well. The handle didn't change much. It was wider at the top and narrower at the bottom, which was uncoordinated. It was like a baby swinging a heaven's halberd. Hoy! Luli yelled and swung his saber. His fate will spun quickly, and so did his saber. All the warriors around him were smashed away. Apart from the barbarians, the feather race, Asmodeans, and voodoo race were all cut in half. Dozens of barbarians were smashed away with their chests covered in blood. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Jiang Hu and the others began to attack. They were in a good position, surrounding Jiang, Qiling in a circle. They released Xian energy to the outside so that they wouldn't hurt their own people. Boom, 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 boom. The more than 100 barbarians outside the Tower of Delicacy were either cut in half or smashed away by the Xian energy. Warriors of the 4 alien races were smashed away as well. It was a mess. In the distance, royal family warriors of the 4 alien races snorted. As soon as Luli came out, he had killed dozens, but they didn't mind. There were thousands of them. How many could Luli kill when they fought together? Kill! Luli swung his huge saber like a demon. His eyes were filled with killing intent as he shouted. The roar was made with the dragon roar divine skill, which shook the eardrums of the warriors of the 4 alien tribes. Even Jiang Hu and the others trembled and felt their eardrums hurt. Whoosh, the fate will spun on. Luli wielded his saber and hacked at a barbarian in front of him. Not to be outdone, the barbarian waved his hammer and smashed at Luli's saber. Meet force with force. The barbarians were powerful. Who were they afraid of? This puny human actually dared to use a weapon to fight him head-on? Wasn't that courting death? Bang! The huge saber collided with the copper hammer. To the astonishment of many people, including Jiang Hu, the barbarian's copper hammer was easily knocked away. Then the saber continued forward and slashed the barbarian away. The barbarian's head exploded, and he died on the spot. Whoosh! The saber didn't stop for even a moment, sweeping towards a demon race member next to him. That demon race member gritted his teeth and took out 2 daggers to block the saber. At the same time, he wanted to retreat. Go to hell. However, for some reason, the demon race member stopped. He stayed where he was, and the saber cut the demon race member in half. Bang, 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 bang. The saber danced around, swung, stabbed, and hacked. A white glare swept across in a rain of blood. All the alien races that were targeted by the saber were cut to death without exception. Luli was unstoppable. He flew his fate wheel forward, killing Buddhas and immortals. None of them could survive one move. How? How? Jiang Hu and the others were stunned. Many could not figure out why Luli was so ferocious. Or, why were the 4 alien races so weak? It was not normal for Luli to kill so many of them as if they were cattle and sheep. Soul attack. Somehow, Jiang Hu understood. Just now, that demon race member was trying to run away, but he suddenly stopped moving. Then, he was killed by Luli easily. It must be because of Luli's soul attack. Jiang Hu's eyes glowed when he remembered that Luli had been experimenting with soul attacks using demon race members. He shouted, "Attack indiscriminately. We can make it out." More warriors of the 4 alien races were coming at them. Luli controlled his fate wheel to spin. He had to take care of 4 sides. He never stopped moving his saber. He kept sweeping and stabbing, killing all the alien races that got close. Therefore, Luli was under great pressure. Everyone wanted to give him a hand. Even if they could not kill the alien races, they could create chaos for him and suppress the enemies. Buzzing, someone released his bead of life. Luli shouted at once, "Just use Xian energy and bloodline skills. Don't use your bead of life." It will interfere with my attacks. The fate wheel was spinning at a high speed. If everyone released their bead of life, how could Lu Li attack? The bead of life might be able to smash many alien races to death, but it would cause chaos and Lu Li would not be able to control the situation. Okay. Jiang He released his Soul Feast butterflies. Several warriors used their bloodline skills, such as ice arrows, water columns, and spikes. Their bloodline skills were the 6th or 7th rank, which were not that powerful. Only Jiang He's was of the 8th rank, which was not bad. Jiang Qiling was about to release her Soul Feast butterflies when Lu Li stopped her. Qiling, don't move. Listen to me later. Jiang Qiling stood behind Lu Li obediently. She watched as Lu Li hacked at the alien races with his huge saber. Those that were hit by his saber would either die or be injured. A smile blossomed on her pale face. Jiang He and the others didn't understand, but Jiang Qiling did. The reason why Lu Li could kill the alien races so easily was because of his powerful soul attacks. Lu Li's psychic power had been keeping an eye on the enemies nearby. Anyone that got close would be targeted by his soul attacks. Clearly, his soul attacks were horrifying. Anyone that got close would be hit. His divine weapon of Dragon King was more than 100 feet long. He could injure or kill the alien races one by one. Woo, woo, woo. From the voodoo race came a low and strange cry. Following that, from a direction came a cloud of colorful smoke that enveloped Lu Li and the others. The other 3 races stepped back as soon as they saw the smoke, fearing that they would be affected. Lu Li checked with psychic power and shouted, "Be careful. There are bewitching insects in the toxins. Don't let them get close to you." Jiang Tianshun gave Jiang Qiling some antidote pellets. Those pellets could stop the toxins, but not the bewitching insects. Once the bewitching insects entered a person's body, the person would become a slave of the voodoo race and be controlled by them. They were on high alert. Lu Li shook his sleeve and said, "Little White, wake up. See if you can control those insects." There were too many bewitching insects. If Little White couldn't control them, it would be troublesome. Lu Li wasn't afraid himself. He could crush the insects with his blood claw, but he was afraid of Jiang He and the others. A young lady suddenly let out a scream. One of the insects was so fast that it rushed into her nose in a green blur. She trembled and her eyes glowed green. Bang! Lu Li used psychic power to check. Without any hesitation, he kicked the young lady off his fate wheel. Jiang He and the others were shocked. Warriors of the Palace of Peaceful Heavens were enraged. One of them shouted, "Sister Ling, Lu Li, what are you doing?" Chapter 502. They checked with psychic power. That young lady from the Palace of Peaceful Heavens had a green glare in her eyes. She looked ferocious, and there were some green tattoos on her skin. She looked quite horrifying. Squeak, squeak, from inside Lu Li's sleeve came a strange noise. Then a surge of energy was released. The insects in the smoke didn't dare to come any closer. Whoosh, Lu Li casually put a poison protection pellet into Little White's mouth. Little White chewed and swallowed the pellet with dissatisfaction. It stared at the smoke around with disdain, as if it was not afraid of the toxins at all. Okay, let's kill the voodoo race first. Lu Li was emboldened. The most horrifying thing about the voodoo race was their toxins and insects. Now that they were not afraid of them, the voodoo race was the least threatening to them. Whoosh! Lu Li's fate will dash toward the voodoo race in a blur. His psychic power turned into thousands of golden needles and enveloped dozens of voodoo race warriors in front of him. Bang! Lu Li's saber didn't have many tricks. He once created a saber move of his own. There was nothing special about that move except for one thing: speed. Of all the martial arts in the world, speed was the only thing that could not be defeated. Lu Li's physical body was strong. He had released the burning blood skill a while ago. His physical strength was horrifying. Lu Li swung the huge saber that was more than 100 feet long easily, as if he were chopping a tree with a chopper. As soon as Lu Li dashed into the voodoo race, they were in trouble. Their toxins were horrifying, but the poison protection pellet given by Jiang Tianshun was something the demon-slaying hall developed after years of research. Jiang Tianshun said that the voodoo race warriors in the small battlefield didn't know how to use powerful toxins. After all, their realms were limited. The toxins of the voodoo race were related to their realms. With the poison protection pellet, none of the toxins in the small battlefield could hurt Lu Li and the others. The toxins were ineffective, and the insects were suppressed by Little White. The two most powerful skills of the voodoo race were rendered useless. The voodoo race was weak in defense, and their souls were not strong. Naturally, they would end badly. Swish, the divine weapon of Dragon King, cut across the sky like a grim reaper's scythe. Everywhere the saber passed, many voodoo race warriors were killed. Broken bodies and blood were everywhere. Those voodoo race warriors didn't even have the chance to scream. Luli cut through them as if they were straws. Shoot! Attack! The feather race and the Asmodeans could not sit still anymore. Many voodoo race warriors were being killed. Luli could break out of the encirclement easily. The feather race and the Asmodeans could not just watch Lu Li and Jiang Qiling run away. However, the barbarian race didn't make too big a move because they couldn't launch long-range attacks, and they weren't as unafraid of the voodoo poison as the devil race. Many of the feather race flapped their wings. A ray of sun rose between their eyebrows as they flew over. Some of them shot out arrows, and some with daggers. They were all aimed at Lu Li. Many voodoo race warriors were among them as well. Xiao! Many demons burrowed into the ground and disappeared. They were obviously preparing to launch a sneak attack. Some of the Asmodeans waved their truncheons. Chilly wind blew, and countless venomous creatures, such as snakes, centipedes, and moths flew toward Lu Li and the others. Lu Li was not afraid of poisons because Little White could shock him. But the arrows and knives in the sky were troublesome. The Asmodeans hiding underground were troublesome as well. Jiang Qiling, release your shield and cover the back. Lu Li was not afraid himself, but Jiang Hu and the others could not. He shouted. Jiang Qiling's ring glowed as a huge shield flew out and shielded Lu Li and the others. Bang, 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 bang. Arrows and knives were coming, but many of them were blocked by the shield. The shield was a holy grade Xian artifact. Naturally, the arrows, knives, and daggers could not pierce through it. Bang! Lu Li swung his saber, and every time, he could kill dozens of voodoo race warriors. In the time for more than a dozen breaths, he had killed hundreds of voodoo race warriors. The voodoo race was scared. Their attacks were ineffective. All they could do was produce some green glares which were neutralized by the Xian energy of Jiang Hu and the others. The insects were afraid to come closer. They would only be slaughtered mercilessly by Lu Li if they stayed here. Royal disciples of the voodoo race shouted in anger. The voodoo race began to retreat. Okay, once the voodoo race retreated, Lu Li could break out easily given his speed. By then, the sea was wide and the sky was high. Lu Li had cloning skills. Who would catch up with them? Jiang Hu and the others were overjoyed. But before they could smile, the ground below them cracked. Dozens of Asmodeans flew up. They were so fast that they approached the fate wheel in an instant. All of them had a glowing thorn in their hands, and they stabbed at the fate wheel. The Asmodean strategy was to break Lu Li's fate wheel first. As long as Lu Li's fate wheel was broken, he would be greatly weakened, and the others would have to wait for death. You asked for it. Lu Li sneered. His psychic power turned into thousands of golden needles and rained down. The Asmodeans couldn't move anymore. Lu Li controlled the fate wheel to crush them. Boom! Dozens of Asmodeans were crushed into pieces. Lu Li glanced over. Instead of running away, he flew back. At the same time, his body flashed, and dozens of doppelgangers flew in all directions. Do you have the guts to fight your way into the Asmodeans with me? Lu Li shouted. Jiang Hu and the others felt their blood boiling. They shouted, "Charge, charge, charge." Jiang Qiling didn't say anything, but she understood what Lu Li meant. The Asmodeans of the feather race were too fast, and they were constantly shooting arrows. Dai Feiyu was not here. Her holy grade shield could not hold them off for long. If they wanted to run away, they must defeat the Asmodeans of the feather race first. Lu Li stared at the royal member of the feather race with a crown. He shouted with killing intent, "Royal member of the feather race, die." Lu Li's fate wheel flew backward at the top of its speed and approached the feather race at once. Lu Li swept out thousands of golden needles and then swung his saber. Dozens of feather race warriors were cut in half from the waist. Blood sprayed everywhere. Boom! 2 of the harpies hadn't been killed, but one of their wings had been sliced off, making it impossible for them to fly again. Their bodies tumbled to the ground, kicking up a cloud of dust as they let out heart-wrenching screams. Lu Li's fate wheel spun and dashed toward the feather race's camp. Jiang Hu and the others used all kinds of Xian energy to knock away the arrows. Whoosh! Jiang Qiling controlled the huge shield to fly in front of her. She focused all of her attention on the shield, trying to block off as many arrows as possible while not affecting Lu Li's attacks. Lu Li released his blood claw, but there were too many arrows, and some were still coming. He had to crush the arrows with his blood claw, or he would be riddled with holes. Originally, the 4 alien races were in different directions. The fact that they were gathered together was a great deterrent and threat to Lu Li and the others. But now, it had become the biggest disadvantage. The warriors were crowded together, and it was not easy for them to disperse. Lu Li and the others killed their way into the army. The feather race could not attack, as they could hurt their own by mistake. Chapter 503. Jiang Qiling passed on a large amount of soul energy to Lu Li. The divine energy was absorbed by the silver dragon mark, and the silver dragon mark transmitted some strange energy to strengthen Lu Li's soul. What was more, his soul energy was different from before. There was a qualitative leap. Lu Li could release more than 10,000 golden needles of psychic energy at a time. Those golden needles might not be as powerful as the sharp knives of psychic energy, but they were not weak either. What was important was that there were too many of them. Hundreds of golden needles of psychic energy went into the minds of the feather race warriors and invaded their soul pawns from all sides. The souls of the feather race warriors were confused, and they felt a tearing pain. How could they control their bodies to fight back? The royal prince of the feather race saw this. He was panicking when he saw Lu Li killing so many of them easily. Lu Li was very close to him. Lu Li was not slower than the royal prince. If Lu Li were closer, the royal prince would be killed as well. Buzzing. From between the royal prince's eyebrows came out a ray of light. Then a golden bow appeared in his hand. He shot at Lu Li for more than a dozen arrows in a row. The more than a dozen arrows connected with each other. They were so powerful that even space was cracked open. Lu Li felt he was being targeted. He looked up at once, only to see streaks of golden light coming from the distance. Even space was being torn apart. He stared at the golden bow in the feather race prince's hand. The bow must be a piece of treasure. It might not be a quasi-relic, but it must be a holy grade Xian artifact. Buzzing. Jiang Qiling had noticed it long ago. She moved her shield in front of Lu Li. The golden bow and arrows were much more powerful than regular ones. Jiang Qiling was worried that Lu Li could not defend himself. Bang, 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 bang. The arrows kept hitting on the shield. The shield glowed and shook. After being hit for another 5 times, blood oozed out from the corner of Jiang Qiling's mouth. The shield dimmed and shrank back into Jiang Qiling's hand. Boy! Lu Li swung his saber and hacked at the arrows coming at him from behind. The moment his saber and the arrows collided, a surge of force came through. Lu Li almost lost his grip on the divine weapon of Dragon King. So powerful. Lu Li's saber was bounced off. He waved his blood claw and scratched forward. Bang, bang, bang. The arrows came again and again, but they were crushed by Lu Li's blood claw. The blood claw did not disappoint Lu Li. The more than a dozen arrows of the royal feather race were all crushed by Lu Li. But Lu Li's blood claw was fine. It's impolite not to reciprocate. Feather royal family die. Lu Li snorted in anger. Once again, he generated dozens of clones and poured out thousands of golden needles. This time, however, he didn't kill anyone. Instead, He charged forwards like a sharp sword, swinging his blade wildly through the air. All of the harpies in front of him were sent flying as his main body and his clones charged towards the harpy royal family. Bang, 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 the clones were destroyed one by one. Luli moved closer and closer to the feather race prince. Seeing that Luli's cold eyes were getting closer, the prince was scared. Suduk, the prince of the feather race, gave the order to retreat, or at least to stay away from this area. Luli was not slower than him, and the prince dared not to let Luli get close. His life was precious, and he could not afford to lose his life here. What was more, Luli's attacks were too horrifying. In such a short time, he had killed more than 1,000 while Luli only lost one. The feather race royal family was scared out of their wits. What was more, the barbarian race didn't attack, and the voodoo race retreated. The feather race royal family was unhappy because so many feather race disciples had died. The feather race was retreating fast. Luli could catch up with them, but it was pointless. The Asmodeans were catching up again, and the barbarian race was itching for action as well. Should we kill them or not? Luli turned to Jiang Hu and the others. Jiang Qiling was hurt, and Luli was hesitating. On the other hand, Jiang Hu and the others were enraged. One of the young masters said with hatred, "Kill them all. Kill them all." Everyone's eyes were red from the killing. Their blood boiled as they shouted, "Kill! Kill them all!" Luli made up his mind. He turned around and charged at the Asmodeans. As he released the golden needles, the more than a dozen Asmodeans could not move at once. Luli continued to wield his saber. The Asmodeans were at the back. Now that Luli was fighting back, the team was in chaos. The voodoo race and the feather race ran away. They were not idiots. Clearly, their morale was shaken. Swish, there was a ripple on the left. A man flew out toward a warrior of the Dew family. Luli had just cut to the left to kill 3 Asmodeans. It was too late for him to save the Asmodean. He had to release the golden needles of soul and yelled, "Look out!" Luli's warning was too late. Even though the Asmodean was frightened by Luli's golden needles of soul, the needles had already pierced into the Dew family warrior's head. Bang! The Dew family warrior's head was crushed. Jiang Hu and the others were enraged. They swung their sabers at the Asmodean and hacked him to death. If the Asmodeans are not leaving, then let's go. Luli knew he could not go on. He had to find a chance to leave, or else the Asmodeans would stab them to death one by one. He glanced over to the Asmodeans and saw one with a unique appearance. That Asmodean was naked from the waist up, wearing a pair of black pants. He was short and had a skinny face. He had a saber in his hand that was glowing in a red light. A group of Asmodeans surrounded him. Luli knew this must be a royal of the Asmodeans. Pointing at the Asmodean with his saber, Luli shouted, "This is a royal of the Asmodeans. Kill him." With that said, Luli flew away on his fate wheel. The Asmodeans panicked. They gathered around the royal Asmodean and retreated, leaving only dozens of Asmodeans to guard the rear. Okay, Luli was relieved. Once the Asmodeans retreated, so would the barbarians. They were safe now. That being said, he didn't let his guard down. While flying his fate wheel forward, he used psychic power to check the surroundings. Buzzing, as he had expected, the space on the left and right began to tremble. 2 Asmodeans poked their heads out from the void and aimed at Luli and Jiang Hu with their needles. "Go to hell," Luli shouted. He poured out the golden needles of soul and swung his saber at the Asmodeans. One of the Asmodeans was cut to death before it could fly out. Boom! The other Asmodean was hit by the golden needles of soul and was hacked to death by Jiang Hu and the others. At the same time, the ground on the ground cracked. Several Asmodeans flew up and stabbed at Luli's fate wheel. Clank, 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 clank. Unfortunately, Luli's fate wheel was so hard that their needles couldn't pierce through. Luli released soul attacks, and then his fate wheel smashed down. Several Asmodeans were smashed into pieces. Bang, 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 the barbarians began to retreat. They looked silly, but they were not. Just now, when the feather race and the Asmodeans attacked, they didn't do anything. They knew very well that they couldn't kill Luli. "You want to leave?" "Not so fast." the feather race, and the Asmodeans were fast, and their attacks were strange. The voodoo race had toxins, but Luli didn't have so many antidote pellets. Barbarians were different. Apart from strength, the barbarians only had thunderbolts in their attacks. They would be fine as long as they were careful. Therefore, Chapter 504. The barbarians were not slow, but they were much slower compared to Luli. Luli was not in a hurry. He followed the barbarians and released golden needles of soul to attack several barbarians when he was close. Then, he would hack at the barbarians with his saber to kill them, and then retreat at once. His cloning skill was working. The barbarians could not tell where he was. He could kill several barbarians here and there, slowly nibbling away at them. 6 hours. In merely 6 hours, Luli had killed more than 100 of the barbarian race. There were about 800 to 900 barbarians this time, and Luli had killed 1/9 of them. Jiang Qiling sat in the middle of her fate wheel with her eyes closed. Jiang Hu and the others didn't do anything either. Luli was here, so they didn't have to do anything. Some of them were injured, but they were sitting on their fate wheels to tend to their wounds. On the other hand, the barbarians could not attack unless they were close to Luli. Once they were close enough, Luli could kill them easily. Luli was a bit tired. The continuous soul attacks had weakened his soul. He didn't stop. He took some soul-nurturing pellets and went on. How could he miss such a good chance? The barbarians were losing their temper, and their morale was low. For Luli, it was not hundreds of barbarians, but countless points. The barbarians would shout in grief and indignation every now and then. They had thought about fighting back, but Luli was like a loach. Once they did, he would run away and then attack from another direction. They were like a herd of antelopes, and Luli was a cheetah. The cheetah would follow the herd of antelopes and kill some of them every now and then. When the herd of antelopes turned around and pointed their horns at the cheetah would run away and go on hunting in another direction. Half a day later, more than 200 barbarians were killed. The remaining barbarians stopped fighting back. They just ran for their lives, trying to get back to the base camp of the barbarian race as soon as possible. In the small world, each race had a base camp with strong inhibition formations. Alien race warriors would be weakened when they entered the base camp. As long as they could get back to the base camp, the barbarians could kill Luli easily if he dared to enter, and they would all be safe. The morale of the barbarians was at the lowest point. They looked at Luli as if he were a demon. If this group of people could escape, they would definitely spread the news that a monster had appeared on the side of the human race and had single-handedly defeated the 4 races. Jiang Hu and the others were looking at Luli in a different light now. Soul warriors were rare, not to mention those who had great achievements in soul cultivation. Luli had just reached the eternal realm not long ago. How strong could his soul be? But now, he could rely on soul attacks to sweep through the 4 clans. In the future, he would definitely become a soul expert whose name could shake the entire Central State. Luli didn't feel proud of himself, even though everyone was looking at him with admiration. Instead, he felt ashamed and guilty. From time to time, he would look at Jiang Qiling, who was healing her wounds. Seeing her pale face, he blamed himself even more. He was very clear that the reason why he could possess such a powerful soul attack was not because of his own ability, but because of the woman in front of him, who looked like she could even be blown away by the wind. She had passed on more than half of the soul energy she had been cultivating for countless years to him. Her soul must have been severely injured. How much pain and trauma would a person have to suffer if they forcibly split their own soul into 2 halves and gave 1 half to someone else? Luli didn't know how Jiang Qiling did it, but he knew that she must have gone through a lot of pain. Luli forced a smile on his face as he recalled what happened in the Tower of Delicacy. He had only had sex with a woman twice in his life. The first time, he was in a passive position. Then, the toxins in his body were sucked away and the woman was still frozen. The second time, he was drugged. He didn't know what was going on, and a woman gave him her divine energy and more than half of her soul energy. Now, The woman was even paler than a piece of paper. A gust of wind could hurt her. Luli felt even more guilty when he remembered that Jiang Qiling was covered with a white cloth that was stained with blood. Still, he couldn't figure out why the famous slut of the Central Plains was still a virgin. Luli looked at Jiang Qiling with pity again, and then turned to the barbarians in the distance. He was filled with killing intent. He wanted to kill all the barbarians and then kill the alien races in the small battlefield one by one to avenge Jiang Qiling. Buzzing, once again, Luli generated clones. He dashed toward the barbarians like a starving beast. Once again, he bared his fangs, trying to swallow several barbarians alive. Whoosh, 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 on the flatland at the center of the small world, a human army was running wildly. There were only thousands of them, but they were in a long formation. All of them were aggressive. Thousands of them gave off the momentum of tens of thousands of people. At the front were warriors from families of the northern Central Plains. They were so anxious that they wished they could fly for thousands of miles in an instant as if they had wings. Behind them were Ji Mengtian, Yang Xian, Lu Xuan, and Dai Feiyu. They didn't show any expressions, but there was anxiety in their eyes. They seemed to be worried that Jiang Qiling would be killed by the alien races. Of course, one could never judge a book by its cover. Young masters and young ladies from major families were shrewd. Nobody could tell what they were thinking. Whoosh! From the distance came a man. Yang Xian took a look, waved his hand, and said, "Stop." The man was from the Hades Society, a scout sent by Yang Xian. The army stopped at once. Yang Xian stepped out. The scout dropped to one knee and reported, "Young master, the armies of the 4 alien races have been defeated. Luli is going after the barbarians with his warriors. He is going after the barbarians' base camp at the west." Everyone was silent. Yang Xian blinked. He looked back at Lu Xuan and Ji Mengtian, thinking they had heard it wrong. Yang Xian stared blankly for a moment before a trace of anger appeared on his handsome face. He lifted his leg and gave the scout a heavy kick, sending him flying. Only then did he say angrily, "Are you stupid or what? Are you still sleeping?" Whoosh! Right at that moment, another man came from the distance. It was Ji Yuan from the Samsara Palace. He rushed over and shouted from the distance, "Young lady, the 4 alien races have been defeated. Luli has killed many alien races by himself. He is going after the barbarians." What? Everyone was shocked. One person might make a mistake, but how could 2 people make a mistake? What was more, the 2 had the same information. It could only be the truth. Warriors of the northern Central Plains burst into tears of joy. One of them shouted, "Where is Lady Qi? Is she all right?" "She's fine," Ji Yuan answered with a straight face. "Lady Qi seems to be slightly injured, but I don't think it is a big deal." A glint of coldness rose in Ji Mengtian's eyes. She and Lu Xuan looked at each other. Their pupils contracted as they felt a gust of cold wind on their backs, shivering. They didn't know what had happened, but one thing was for sure. Either Lu Li or Jiang Qiling had abilities beyond the noble lord realm. In other words, almost no one in the small battlefield could defeat Lu Li or Jiang Qiling. Ji Mengtian was the only one who had a quasi-relic. If Lu Li and Jiang Qiling were to seek revenge, then the consequences would be unimaginable. Chapter 505. Boom, boom, boom. Inside a huge mountain range, dozens of barbarians were waving iron chains and copper hammers, dancing wildly in the sky. They had horrifying strength. The mountains around them were smashed open. The mountains were cracked, and dust was rising. Even the ground was cracked by them. They were attacking fate wheels with a team of people on them. Every one of them was real. Not even psychic power could tell them apart, not to mention the naked eye. The clones were smashed into pieces in midair. In the eyes of the barbarians was despair. Just as they had expected, streaks of strange energy sneaked into their minds and into their soul pawns, attacking from all sides. They were average barbarians. How could they have soul protection relics? In an instant, all the barbarians felt pain in their souls. They could no longer control their bodies, and could only stay where they were. Swish, with a piercing sound, a huge saber cut at the head of a barbarian with a glaring white glare. The saber smashed at the barbarian twice in a flash. The barbarian's head was smashed, and he fell down, staying in the mountain forever. Swish, the saber was fast, and it kept attacking. Every time it made 2 moves, a barbarian's head would be smashed. Barbarians were strong in defense. However, their souls were in chaos. They could not dodge or use Xian energy to defend themselves. That saber was a holy grade weapon. The user of the saber was not weaker than the barbarians. How could the barbarians survive? In the time for a dozen breaths, more than half of the more than 20 barbarians were dead. The remaining barbarians had just come back to their senses when a gentle breeze came. That strange energy pierced into their soul pawns again. They could only wait for their heads to be smashed and die. Boom! The last barbarian fell to the ground. Luli put away his saber and took a soul-nurturing elixir. He took a deep breath and flew on his fate wheel, chasing after barbarians. He had been chasing for 4 days and had killed more than 600 or 700 barbarians. More than half of the barbarian army died in his hands. He was exhausted mentally and physically, but he didn't rest. He didn't want to miss such a good chance. He would kill as many barbarians as he could. Not only could he avenge himself, but he could also gain many points. Whoosh, the fate wheel kept on flying. Flying here consumed a lot of Xian energy, which is why Luli was so exhausted. Seeing that Luli's eyes were bloodshot, the warriors behind him wanted to say something to comfort him, but they didn't dare to. Jiang Qiling was still sitting behind Luli. She had been resting for several days, but her face was still pale. What was injured was her soul, not her body. Soul injuries were the most difficult to recover from, and could even affect her cultivation for the rest of her life. It was impossible for her to recover in a short period of time. Luli, take a break. We can kill the outsiders slowly. We still have a lot of time. This small battlefield is less than half a year. You can only enter and not leave. Jiang Qiling finally opened her eyes and said softly. Luli turned around in surprise. Seeing her dull eyes, he asked with concern, Qiling, are you feeling better? Okay, Jiang Qiling forced a smile and said, I am fine. I will be fine after resting for half a month. Don't worry about me. Find a place to rest. You can hunt down the alien races later. Right now, you can kill the alien races in the small world at will. There's no hurry. Okay. Luli could turn a deaf ear to others, but not to Jiang Qiling. He looked around and said, I will find a good place. We will camp and rest. Jiang Qiling nodded with a smile. Luli didn't mind the barbarians anymore. He walked around in an area with a radius of 30 miles and found a small river. Along the river, he found a valley and flew into the valley with the others. Jianghu. Luli waved his hand. Jianghu flew down at once. He made sure that the river was not poisoned before he took out the tents to set up camp. At the same time, one warrior was sent to patrol nearby, while the others went to catch fish in the river and look for small beasts to have a hot meal. Luli didn't mind. He put away his fate wheel, held Jiang Qiling's hand, and sat on the grass by the river. He looked at Jiang Qiling. He had a lot to say, but in the end, he just said, Qiling, I will be responsible for you. Ha. Jiang Qiling shook her head and said with a smile, You cannot. I am the future chosen warrior. Jiang Wuwa will not marry me to you. You are just an abandoned disciple of the Lu family, and you want to marry me? Luli forced a smile. He knew Jiang Qiling was joking, but it made sense. It would be difficult for him to marry Jiang Qiling. He still had a long way to go to gain the approval of Jiang Wuwa and the Pavilion of Delicacy. Jiang Qiling smiled gently and said, I don't care about the status, and I don't want it. I have such a bad reputation. You will be laughed at by the world. Qiling is already satisfied to be your confidant in this life. As for the title, I don't care about it. Reputation? Luli thought of something. He frowned and remembered the piece of red cloth. He wanted to ask about it, but he was afraid that he would hurt Jiang Qiling's feelings. Jiang Qiling was smart. She looked around and made sure that nobody was around. Then she said in a low voice, Are you surprised? Ha. I may have given up on myself, but I will not joke about my health. I am born in a prestigious family. I will not do something so shameless. As a matter of fact, on many occasions, I find someone to get back at Jianghua. I want to ruin my reputation so that Jianghua can't hold his head up high. Just as I thought, Lu Li understood. Jiang Qiling was faking her sluttiness. She did many things on purpose. She was getting back at Jianghua. She tainted herself on purpose so that the world would misunderstand her and laugh at the pavilion of delicacy. She was a young lady from a prestigious family, and she had received a good education. Girls valued their reputation and chastity the most. But she had been labeled as a slut for so many years. Alas, Lu Li sighed but said nothing. He just grabbed her hands, trying to give her some warmth. After a while, he said seriously, "Jiang Qiling, let bygones be bygones. From now on, I will not let you suffer any grievances as long as I am here. Anyone that dares to bully you will have to do it over my dead body." Tears ran down her cheeks. She looked at Lu Li with infatuation. She put on a smile, crying and laughing at the same time. She threw herself into Lu Li's arms, nodded and said, "Lu Li, with your words, everything is enough. I am willing to die, even if I have to die now." "You cannot say that." Lu Li shook his head and said, "We need to live on. We want to see the beauty of the world, and we want to stand at the peak of the world. We want to make those who have bullied us pay. Qiling, are you willing to go on with me?" "Yes, I will." Chapter 506. They rested by the river for a day. Lu Li and Jiang Qiling both had a good meal, and then Lu Li went to his tent to sleep. Sleep was the best medicine for recovery. Sometimes, a good sleep was better than taking more soul-nourishing pellets. Lu Li enjoyed another meal after he woke up. Then he flew back to the base camp with the others. Jiang Qiling was too weak, and she needed some rest. Lu Li wanted to send them back to the base camp, and he would act on his own. Jiang Qiling didn't agree. She said she wanted to go with Lu Li. This time, Lu Li didn't spoil her and insisted that she go back. In the end, Jiang Qiling agreed. She knew that her soul was weak, and it would take her at least 10 days or half a month to walk. It would take at least 2 to 3 months for her to recover. During that time, she wouldn't be of any help to Lu Li. Instead, she would be a burden to him. She understood that Lu Li was here to get points to get the antidote for Bai Qiushue. Therefore, she agreed to go back. Lu Li flew back to the base camp on his fate wheel. Along the way, they would run into some alien races. Lu Li could take care of them all by himself. They flew for a couple of days, but didn't run into too many human warriors. They only ran into some human warriors who seemed to be scouts. Lu Li didn't pay attention to them. He flew back to the base camp quickly. He flew in a straight line fast. In just 5 or 6 days, he arrived at the base camp. There were more human warriors here. They all looked at Lu Li as if he were a monster. Along the way, Lu Li said nothing and showed no expression. Nobody could tell if he was happy or angry. When they arrived at the base camp, there were more human warriors here. Lu Li saw 2 familiar faces from the distance, Lu Lin and Lu Hongyu. When the 2 of them saw Lu Li from afar, their faces were filled with joy. Lu Li and Lu Lin made some eye contact, and they had some understanding. Jiang Qiling thought Lu Li would lose his temper. However, he said nothing and did nothing. He showed them to a corner and asked Jiang Hu and the others to build a camp. The news of Lu Li's return caused a sensation at the base camp. Many young masters and young ladies of the northern central plains gathered around. Lu Li and Jiang Qiling didn't pay attention to them, but they sent Jiang Hu to gather some information. By the time the campsite was set up, they had already gathered enough information. The human army was there to rescue Jiang Qiling and Lu Li. When they learned that Lu Li had defeated the 4 alien races, they returned to their base camp. Tian, Yang Xian, Lu Xuan, and the others all set off to hunt more alien races. Lu Li sneered. Lu Xuan, Ji Ming Tian, and the others might not have the courage to face him. Lu Li didn't ask for more details. He asked Jiang Hu to gather all the warriors of the northern central plains and gave them an order. Unless they had to leave their base camp to fight against the alien races, they were to gather nearby and protect Jiangqiling. Then, Lu Li told Jiang Hu and the others to gather more people to protect Jiangqiling. If anything happened to Jiangqiling, he would behead Jiang Hu and the others when he returned. All right, you don't have to scare them. Jiangqiling walked out of the tent and said, "This is our base camp. There are many people here. The alien races don't dare to come in. Which human dares to kill me in public? Don't worry and go." Jiangqiling handed a bottle of pellets to Lu Li and said, "There are only a few poison protection pellets left. You must be careful when you run into the voodoo race. Also, if you run into them, don't kill them. Revenge is a dish best served cold." Jiangqiling knew very well what Lu Li was going to do this time. Not only was he going to kill alien races for points, he was also going to get revenge on Ji Mingtian and the others. She knew Lu Li's personality very well. He wouldn't be able to suppress his anger no matter what. Lu Li nodded. Jiangqiling whispered again, "They all have treasures to protect their souls. That one is a quasi-relic. Don't force yourself. If you die, I won't live on alone." Lu Li put on a solemn expression. He nodded again. Then, he stroked Jiangqiling's hair in public, threw her a meaningful glance, and left with determination. That was right. Lu Xuan, Yang Xian, Ji Mingtian, and Dai Feiyu all had treasures to protect their souls. Ji Mingtian had a quasi-relic. Maybe Yang Xian and Lu Xuan had quasi-relic as well. So what? He almost died because of them. In a small world, there were no powerful warriors to protect them. This was the best chance. If he couldn't get back at them this time, he might not have another chance in the future. Revenge was a dish best served cold. That was under the premise that they were not powerful enough. Lu Li was confident that unless their soul protection treasures were top-level holy grade Xian artifacts or quasi-relics, he could still make them pay for what they had done. Lu Li didn't ride on his fate wheel. He walked on step by step. Jiangqiling and the others watched him leave. Jiang Hu and the others were solemn. They had a feeling that Lu Li was going to poke a hole in the sky. Lu Li didn't poke a hole in the sky after he left the base camp. But warriors of the 4 alien races were in a miserable state. He wandered around the small world on his own, dashing around, looking for alien races without a care in which direction he was going. Most of the alien races he ran into were killed. Only a few were lucky enough to escape. Thousands of alien races were attacking the Tower of Delicacy. However, there were more than thousands of alien races in the small world. At least 7,000 or 8,000 of each alien race had come in. Altogether, there were more than 30,000 alien races. Therefore, many alien races didn't know Lu Li. They were excited to see Lu Li coming alone and wanted to torture him to death. How strong was Lu Li's soul attack? As a matter of fact, Lu Li didn't know himself, but he was sure of one thing. He could defeat anyone below the human sovereign realm who didn't have treasures to protect their souls. As for alien races with treasures to protect their souls, Lu Li hadn't run into any. Theoretically speaking, the 4 royal family disciples should have such treasures, but Lu Li didn't have the chance to fight them. The 4 royal family disciples must have gone back to their respective base camps, killing enemies, resting, and occasionally learning about soul attacks. Lu Li's life was fulfilling. He wandered around in the wild for half a month. He didn't know how many alien races he had killed during the half a month. He did a rough calculation and estimated that he had killed at least 4,000 or 5,000 alien races. Including the battle at the Tower of Delicacy half a month ago, the number of alien races he had killed had reached more than 6,000. He didn't know how many points Bai Qiuxue would need to buy the antidote. He had to search for alien races tirelessly and kill them one by one. During the half a month, he ran into many human teams. What disappointed him was, he didn't see Ji Mingtian, Lu Xuan, Yang Xian, or anyone else. He believed that Lu Xuan, Ji Mingtian, and Yang Xian must have sent scouts to scout around. They must have known his whereabouts, and they would stay away as soon as he got close. Lu Li was not in a hurry since he still had half a year. Nobody could leave in less than half a year. One day he would run into them. After half a day of rest, Lu Li pressed on. He put a sheath on his back and put the divine weapon of Dragon King on his back. He was not trying to look cool. It was just that Lu Li was often attacked by enemies, and he didn't want to use his interspatial ring. He could take it out from his back and put the divine weapon of Dragon King back into the sheath after killing enemies. It was much more convenient. Dozens of miles later, Lu Li suddenly saw a ruin. In the ruins, he could faintly see many huge figures. Barbarian race? I have found the base camp of the barbarian race. Lu Li's eyes glowed. There were 4,000 or 5,000 barbarians in the base camp. How many points could he get if he could kill all of them? Let's go. Chapter 507. Lu Li had planned to go to the base camp of the barbarian race, but he stopped because of Jiang Qiling's words. He had been wandering around for half a month and had lost his sense of direction. Unexpectedly, he had found the base camp of the barbarian race. It was fate. There were scouts patrolling outside the base camp of the barbarian race. Lu Li had come so openly that he alerted scouts. Several barbarians screamed and dashed toward Lu Li in a frenzy. However, when one of the barbarians saw that it was Lu Li, his expressions changed. His bell-like eyes were filled with terror. He raised his head and bellowed, which woke up all the barbarians resting in the base camp. In the middle of the base camp was a huge cabin. A relatively small barbarian walked out. His skin was not brown like regular barbarians, but dark brown. The horns on his head were shorter as well. He looked into the distance and saw a puny human being walking toward the base camp with a saber on his back. Anger rose in the barbarian's eyes. He said in the human language, "Damn human. You have come to the base camp of the barbarian race." Woo woo, the small barbarian shouted and made some strange noises. All the barbarians in the base camp gathered around him. He pointed to Lu Li in the distance and mumbled something. The more than 1,000 barbarians dashed over at once. Hundreds of barbarians took a detour to the sides. Clearly, they were going to surround and kill Lu Li. Bang, bang, bang. What was it like when more than 1,000 barbarians were running over? It was as if 10,000 beasts were running at the same time. Their murderous intent spread out from afar. The earth was shaking and the mountains were shaking. It was as if an army of tens of thousands was charging. It was suffocating. Lu Li looked to both sides. He knew what the barbarians were trying to do. Did they want to surround him and kill him with thunderbolts? Was he such a stupid person? Buzzing, Lu Li generated clones. The more than 60 clones scattered to all sides. Average barbarians would not be able to see through them. Lu Li's real body dashed to the left. He could not kill so many barbarians at once. He had to do it bit by bit. More than 1,000 barbarians had charged forward, intending to tear this puny human apart. Lu Li's clones were all dumbfounded. They could not detect Lu Li's real body at all. Their formation was thrown into disarray as many clones were rushing towards them. Boom, boom, boom. Countless chains and hammers danced about, shattering the clones one by one. Large craters were smashed into the ground, causing dust to fly everywhere. Explosions rang out incessantly. By the time the clones were shattered one by one, Lu Li had made it to the left. He created another clone and released the golden soul needles, beginning to slaughter the barbarians on the left. His soul attack was released with his divine telekinesis, so he could attack from far away. The barbarians hadn't even gotten close to him, so he couldn't use his chain hammer to attack. He also didn't have time to release the power of thunder and lightning, so his soul was thrown into chaos. Roar, roar, the barbarians bellowed in rage. Like a bunch of irritated bears, they swarmed toward Lu Li while howling. Same old rules. Lu Li's tactics were the same as before. He used clones to mislead the barbarians. Then, he would look for targets, killing a few here and a few there. After killing them, he would immediately retreat, not lingering to fight. Boom, boom, boom. Every time Lu Li made a move, 4 or 5 barbarians' heads would be smashed. The headless bodies would fall to the ground. Blood stained the ground outside the base camp red. Some barbarians had witnessed Lu Li's ferocious abilities, but not many. Seeing the barbarians being killed one by one, the barbarians were not scared. Instead, they were driven mad. They roared and chased after Lu Li all over the world. Ha ha ha. Luli would laugh every now and then to further agitate the barbarians. Then, he led a group of barbarians to the distance. After all, there were too many barbarians here. If they were surrounded and many of them released the power of thunder and lightning, it would be no laughing matter. Even though he wouldn't be electrocuted to death, it would still be dangerous. Therefore, Luli would lead a group of barbarians to the distance. He would kill a group of barbarians, and then he would come back and kill another group. Over and over again, Luli was fast. Some of the barbarians were strong, and some were weak. Some were fast, and some were slow. Soon, there was a long line. 30 miles later, Luli turned around and began to harvest heads again. First, he created clones. Then he released golden needles of psychic power. In the end, he unsheathed his saber and hacked at the barbarians. One barbarian's head after another were smashed, and they fell to the ground, forever remaining in this land. The bloody battle began, and it lasted for a long time. It was not easy to kill so many barbarians. Luli fought for 4 hours and only killed 400 or 500 barbarians. After he killed the first group of barbarians that came after him, Luli flew away with determination. He had enough time. He didn't have to kill them all at once. He needed to rest and replenish his physical strength and spirit so that he could be at the peak of his abilities. In this way, he wouldn't fail miserably. Luli found a secluded cave and cultivated for half a day. After a hearty meal, he rushed toward the base camp of the barbarian race again. When Luli arrived at the base camp, a large group of barbarians rushed out, yelling, even before the royal family of the barbarian race gave the order. Luli fought and retreated at the same time. He lured a group of barbarians out and started another round of killing. Just like that, several days later, more than half of the thousands of barbarians in the base camp of the barbarian race had been killed by Luli. Now, all the barbarians knew how horrifying Luli was. None of the barbarians that went after Luli came back. Every time, Luli would come back after more than half a day. Rustle, rustle, rustle. Today it was windy. Yellow sand covered the sky. Luli walked out in the wind and sand by himself. He still looked the same. He was wearing a cyan robe, looking fragile. He carried a saber on his back and showed no emotions. His footwork was light. He felt like he was swaying in the wind, as if he could be smashed into a pulp with a hammer. However, this puny human being had become the nightmare of the barbarians. In just a few days, Luli had killed more than 2,000 barbarians. Many of his companions that were alive a few days ago had become cold, headless corpses. Luli stopped about a mile away from the base camp. He stood there quietly. There were still more than 2,000 barbarians in the base camp, but none of them dared to come out. A puny human being was facing thousands of barbarians that were as ferocious as beasts, but none of them dared to move. It was incongruous and strange, but it was real. Luli drew out his saber slowly, pointed at the barbarians in front of him, and put on a mocking smile. He didn't say anything, but his expressions and actions were the most humiliating and provocative. He was mocking the barbarians that they were all cowards. You are pushing it too far. The royal prince of the barbarian race was filled with rage. He yelled, clenched his teeth, and took the lead to rush out of the base camp. Roar, roar, roar. Seeing that their prince had come out, the other barbarians were enraged as well. They yelled and dashed out as well. Ha 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 ha. Luli laughed. He took out his fate wheel and flew back. Once again, his clones went to the right and began to kill the average barbarians. As for the royal prince of the barbarian race, Luli didn't dare to touch him now because he had a large group of powerful barbarians with him. Since he was a royal prince, he must have some special means. Luli didn't dare to take the risk. The bloody fight began again. Luli retreated as he fought. He ran away with another group of barbarians. The prince of the barbarian race gave up after chasing them for 30 miles. He was not fast enough to catch up with Luli, and his escorts wouldn't allow him to take the risk. The humans said that a lady has gained divine energy from Emperor of Heaven Reverse, and she has the chance to become a chosen warrior. Now, another monster of the human race has appeared. Does the heavens want us barbarians to die? Chapter 508. In just half a day, Luli came back. But the hundreds of barbarians that went with him were gone again. One man and one saber stood outside the base camp of the barbarian race, pointing at the barbarians with a mocking and provocative smile on his face. This time, the prince of the barbarian race was smart. He didn't rush out in rage because he knew that once he did, another hundreds of barbarians would lose their lives. The prince of the barbarian race didn't care anymore since he had been disgraced. He ordered barbarians to be forbidden from going out. No matter how Luli shouted, he wouldn't come in as long as they were in the base camp. Ha ha ha. Luli raised his saber for a long time. Seeing that no barbarian was paying attention to him, he laughed, released Dragon Roar, and shouted, I heard that barbarians are warriors. I am disappointed to see you today. I think all the warriors of the barbarian race are dead. The ones left are all cowards, bastards that are afraid of death. Luli was speaking the human language. Barbarians could not understand him, apart from the prince of the barbarian race. The prince of the barbarian race was enraged. He was filled with killing intent. He stepped forward and shouted, Human bastard, don't run away if you have balls. Do you have the guts to fight me for 300 rounds? Luli was just trying to provoke him. He didn't expect that the prince of the barbarian race could understand the human language and speak it. Luli grinned and said, I don't have to be afraid if I have to fight you alone. You are the prince of the barbarian race, right? Do you have the guts to come out and fight me? Why not? A glint of coldness rose in the eyes of the prince of the barbarian race. He dashed forward. The powerful barbarians around him were scared, and they followed him. Luli sneered and said, What? You want to gang up on me again? Is this how you barbarians fight alone? The prince of the barbarian race was enraged. He looked at the dozens of barbarians behind him and shouted. Then he smashed a barbarian away with his bronze hammer. Finally, he stopped his servants and dashed out of the base camp under the worried looks of many barbarians. Luli stepped back slowly. He was so close to the base camp of the barbarian race that he could not afford to be careless. Seeing that Luli was stepping back, the prince of the barbarian race shouted, I said I would not run. Human scum, stop and fight 300 rounds with this prince. Luli turned a deaf ear to the prince of the barbarian race. He walked for a couple of miles and stopped at the peak of a hill. Luli shouted, Come on, you are the prince of the barbarian race? It seems that your status in the barbarian tribe isn't low. The barbarian prince said proudly as he ran, My name is Rue the Iron, and I'm the 963rd generation descendant of the god of barbarians. Human scum, remember, you will die today at the hands of the god of barbarians' descendant, Rue the Iron. Ruetai, Luli pouted. The fate will appeared in his abdomen. He checked Little White that was sleeping in his sleeve with psychic power and shouted, Little White, wake up. We're going to fight soon. Little White and Jiang Chilling were both covered by the divine light. Little White absorbed some divine energy and then fell asleep. The first few times Luli woke Little White up, it would fall asleep again. It must be consuming the divine energy. Little White opened its sleepy eyes and burrowed its little head into it. Rue the Iron was already on his way. Luli left Little White alone and created clones. Whoosh, more than 60 doppelgangers charged in all directions, surrounding Rue the Iron from all directions. All the clones wielded their sabers. Rays of white light enveloped Rue the Iron with murderous intent. Rue the Iron didn't panic, even though he was surrounded by a group of clones. The black horn on his head glowed. Electric arcs came out and formed a shield of lightning with a diameter of more than 10 feet with him as the center. All the clones that approached the shield were destroyed. None of them survived. The descendant of the god of barbarians really is something. Luli nodded to himself. He became more cautious. Like disciples of the 12 royal families of the Central Plains, the royal families of the barbarian race all had their own unique skills. Rue the Iron's thunderbolts were much stronger than those of regular barbarians. Luli believed that there must be other skills. Rue the Iron rushed over. Luli didn't dare to get close to him. He kept sending out clones to circle around him. What made Luli feel relieved was this barbarian couldn't see through Luli's real body. The barbarian was just attacking randomly and never locked on a Luli's real body. Hoi! Rue, the Iron Chain, was clearly stronger than those of regular barbarians. The chain in his hand was longer and of a dark gold color. His chain danced around and chased after Luli's clones. It's about time. Luli was relieved to have a better understanding. He used his psychic power, and many golden needles of psychic power penetrated into Rue, the Iron's mind. If the needles could penetrate Rue, the Iron Soul Pond, this prince of the barbarian race would be a dead man. Buzzing, the soul pond of the prince of the barbarian race suddenly glowed in a black light. A black round tripod appeared with all kinds of animals carved on it, and some mysterious runes looming on it. The lid of the tripod bounced up and down. Black airstreams poured down and enveloped the soul pond. The golden needles slowed down when they encountered the black airstreams. It was hard for them to penetrate Rue, the Iron Soul Pond. He really has a treasure to protect his soul. Luli nodded to himself. He was not discouraged. The golden needles of psychic power were slow, but they could penetrate. Luli's soul pond glowed as he generated another strand of psychic power. This time, there were no golden needles of psychic power. Instead, there were 10 sharp knives of psychic power. Shurian's spiritual consciousness swept over like a gentle breeze, surging into Rue, the Iron Soul space. Then, 10 sharp knives stabbed towards Rue, the Iron Soul Pond. Luli could divide one strand of psychic power into tens of thousands of golden needles. The same amount of soul energy could be divided into 10 knives of psychic power. The difference in power was huge. As he had expected, the knives of psychic power pierced into Rue, the Iron Soul Pond. The thunderbolt shield that Rue the Iron had created collapsed at once. He stopped swinging his chain hammer. He stood there like an idiot. Out of instinct, there was a look of pain on his face. Nice! Li's eyes glowed. He dashed over and swung his saber. He was going to cut Rue the Iron to death. Roar, roar, the barbarians were in a frenzy. Rue the Iron had stopped moving. Clearly, he had been hit by Li's soul attack. Seeing that Rue the Iron was about to be killed, the barbarians lost their minds. They charged at Li like ferocious beasts. Too late. Li smiled coldly. He approached Rue the Iron on his fate wheel and hacked at Rue the Iron's head with his divine weapon of Dragon King. Ha ha! Rue the Iron's eyes, which had been closed all this while, suddenly opened at this moment. His huge face revealed a trace of mockery as he grinned and said, "Human scum, I am the descendant of the barbarian god. Do you think you can kill me so easily?" Buzzing, the two horns on Rue the Iron's head glowed with thunderbolts. A thunderbolt surged into his soul pond and shattered Li's psychic power. Another thunderbolt flew up and hit Li. I am tricked. Li's soul and body trembled. He suddenly realized that Rue the Iron had let the knives of psychic power into his soul pond on purpose, so that Rue the Iron could locate Li's real body and then kill him. Swish, swish. As soon as the thunderbolts wrapped around Li, he felt a piercing pain all over his body. He smelled something burning on his skin and hair. His body trembled out of instinct. He could no longer control himself. Ding, a barbarian god. Rue the Iron bellowed. A black glare came from his head, and a small, beautiful round ding-ding appeared. It grew bigger, and the lid was opened. A surge of force enveloped Li. I failed miserably at an easy task. Li flew toward the round ding-ding uncontrollably. Soon he was sucked in. Then the lid glowed and merged with the round ding-ding. Eventually, it shrank and fell into Rue the Iron's hand. Ha 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 ha. Chapter 509. Fame lived up to its name. It made sense. Since a man was famous, he must have his own unique means and abilities that were different from others. Otherwise, how did he get his fame? Nobody was an idiot. It was the same logic. The barbarian race could dominate the northern land of barbarians and survive for hundreds of thousands of years. Many times, there were chosen warriors of a human race, but they didn't destroy the barbarian race. Luli failed miserably. He thought the barbarian race was just like the mammoth race and the titan race, all brawn and no brains. Rue the Iron had taught Luli a lesson today. As a matter of fact, Rue the Iron had been planning from the very beginning. He had been acting in a violent and impulsive manner, trying to lure Luli into his trap. Luli rushed over like an idiot and fell into his trap. I should have known. Luli was in a space with iron walls. He was annoyed. When he rushed out from the Tower of Delicacy, the barbarian race had been biding their time. This was not what the simple-minded barbarian race would do. Based on the temperament of the barbarian race, they would be the first to rush over. It was pitch dark. Luli used psychic power to check and found a small space with a radius of only 450 feet. There was nothing inside. It was like a stove for making pellets. Hoi! He swung his divine weapon of Dragon King and hacked at the iron wall. With a muffled sound, sparks came out from the saber, but there was no crack on the iron wall, not even a scratch. Is this a quasi-relic? Luli's heart was weighed down. He had used all his strength, and he was holding a holy grade Xian artifact in his hand. But the iron wall was not damaged. Only a quasi-relic could explain this. Boom, boom, boom. He swung his saber a few more times, but there was still no reaction. He put away his saber, and then his blood claw appeared on his right hand. He scratched at the iron wall. Swish! With a shrill sound, sparks came out from the blood claw as well. What was different was that there were some looming runes on the iron wall. The iron wall was not damaged either. Oh no! Luli sighed. The blood claw was almost indestructible. Needless to say, the round tripod was a quasi-relic. Rue the Iron said it was the ding of barbarian god. Since it was related to the word relic, then it could only be a quasi-relic. Buzz! At this moment, the iron walls of the round cauldron, as well as the top and bottom of the cauldron, lit up. Countless mysterious characters flickered, and an indescribable pressure spread out. Luli stood in the middle of the round tripod, staring up with a heavy heart. A terrifying pressure came from above. It was as if the sky was pressing down on him, wanting to crush him into minced meat. Squeak, squeak, little White sneaked out from Luli's sleeve and stood on his shoulder. Its two beady eyes were solemn as well. When Luli woke him up, he didn't even have the chance to do anything before he was sucked in with Luli. Hiss! The lid of the cauldron lit up with a scorching light. Following that, the pressure became more and more terrifying. Electric arcs were faintly discernible. It was as if a huge dark cloud was brewing up a terrifying divine thunder. Divine thunder? Luli finally knew the killer move of the ding of barbarian god. It seemed that after the person was sucked in, the ding of barbarian god would release divine thunderbolts to blast the person into pieces. How terrifying was the killer move of a quasi-divine weapon? The willow twig in Ji Mengtian's bottle could make the alien race's body explode. The power of a quasi-divine weapon was evident. Luli didn't even have a holy grade armor. How could he survive the divine thunderbolts of the ding of barbarian god with his body? Not even Luli himself was confident. Swish, swish, the glow was getting brighter, and the electric arcs were getting more and more violent. The pressure was getting stronger as well. Luli held his breath. He thought quickly, trying to figure out a way out. However, he couldn't come up with a solution no matter how hard he tried. It was like a mortal being faced with the force of heaven and earth. In the face of absolute power, no tricks could help. Hiss! The thunderbolts were ready. A black thunderbolt whooshed across the sky toward Luli's head. It was fast. The space was narrow. Luli couldn't dodge it, even if he wanted to. Whoosh! Right at that moment, little White suddenly leaped up from Luli's shoulder and dashed to his head, bumping into the divine thunderbolt. Boom! The divine thunderbolt struck Little White. Little White was smashed down and smashed into Luli's shoulder. Even Luli staggered back for a few steps. Little White fell to the ground and rolled around, trembling. Little White. Luli's eyes were wide open. He shouted, rushed over and picked up Little White. Whitey's snow-white fur had turned black, and there was a burnt smell on its skin. However, its small eyes were bright and shiny. Squeak, squeak, Little White called out twice, and its body stopped trembling. Then it raised its head proudly. It seemed to be telling Luli in a silent way that the divine thunderbolt was nothing to it, and it couldn't kill it. Ow! Luli couldn't estimate how horrifying the divine thunderbolt was, but he had a strong feeling. If he were hit, he would be skinned alive or dead. How come Little White was fine and only suffered some scratches? As far as Luli could tell, Little White's defense was weak. How strong could a palm-sized beast be? He felt he could smash Little White into a pulp with a casual slap. Now, Little White was fine after being hit by such horrifying divine thunderbolt. This was so strange that Luli couldn't believe it. Can it be? Luli thought of something. Did Little White absorb some divine energy? Could it be that the divine power had modified Little White's body and made it exceptionally strong? I think so. Apart from this explanation, there was nothing else that made sense. Luli felt lucky. He looked at Little White with concern and said, "Little White, can you handle it? If you can't, let me do it. The thunderbolt can't kill me." Squeak, squeak. Little White kept shaking its head. It looked at the divine thunderbolt coming down. Little White's eyes were filled with excitement, as if the thunderbolt was the most delicious food. Swish, the thunderbolts came down again, aiming at Luli. This time, Little White was more active. It flew up and blocked the divine thunderbolt, but it was smashed down again. Little White. Luli rushed over. This time, Little White bounced up from the ground without Luli's help. Little White's fur was gone, and its skin was scorched. But clearly it was fine. Little White's eyes were filled with excitement, and its black face was filled with joy. It didn't seem to be struck by thunderbolt, but it had eaten the most delicious food in the world. Luli looked at Little White speechlessly. Why didn't he know this little thing was masochistic before? It was being struck by thunderbolt, and yet it was so happy. Swish, 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 more thunderbolts came down, and Little White took them all. The more thunderbolts there were, the more excited Little White was. What was stranger was after being struck for 7 or 8 times, Little White's body was the same as before. It was scorched, but its wounds didn't worsen. Its eyes were glowing. It couldn't be better. What kind of beast is this? Luli was not the only one shocked by Little White. Rue the Iron, who was holding the ding of Barbarian God, was stunned as well. Now that he had taken control of the ding of Barbarian God, he knew everything inside. The ding of Barbarian God had 2 functions. One was to trap people, and the other was to kill the creatures inside with thunderbolts. Even a human sovereign realm warrior would be blasted into smithereens, let alone Luli. Little White had withstood all the horrifying thunderbolts. Release thunderbolts. I will blast the man and the beast into pieces. Rue the Iron didn't believe it. He put the ding of Barbarian God on the ground and gathered all the barbarians. He planned to have all the barbarians release thunderbolts to enhance the power of the ding of Barbarian God and gather thousands of thunderbolts to blast Luli and Little White into pieces. Chapter 5:10. A small round cauldron was placed on the ground in the east of the barbarian race's base camp. 2,000 barbarians had gathered around it. 2,000 barbarians surrounded a cauldron. It was a big circle. All the barbarians had horns on their heads glowing with black light. Electric arcs pierced through the air and shot toward the cauldron of Barbarian God. Chi, chi, all the lightning was absorbed by the ding of Barbarian God. These barbarians had been releasing lightning for 3 days and 3 nights. How much power of thunder and lightning was stored in the horns of more than 2,000 barbarians? So much power of thunder and lightning surged into the ding of Barbarian God and was transformed by the ding of Barbarian God into bolts of divine thunder that struck down for 3 days and 3 nights. No matter how powerful the living beings inside were, they would have been smashed into pieces, right? However, inside the ding of Barbarian God, the man and the beast were alive and well. Above the ding of Barbarian God, thunderbolts were roaring. Terrifying thunderbolts rained down, but Whitey took them all. Little White's body kept leaping in the air. Whenever the divine lightning struck, it would immediately leap up and take on the divine lightning. Every time, it would be blasted down, but after rolling a few times on the ground, it would leap up again as if nothing had happened and receive another bolt of divine lightning. The divine thunders these days were many times more powerful than the ones at the beginning. With so many barbarians pouring their power into the ding of Barbarian God, the energy inside the ding of Barbarian God had reached a horrifying level. At the moment, the thunderbolts were at their strongest. If it were Luli, he would have been blasted into ashes. Luli sat in the center of the ding of Barbarian God with his legs crossed, looking at Little White jumping around happily. He forced a smile. Although Little White had withstood the divine lightning, he had thought for 3 days and 3 nights and still could not come up with a solution. The ding of Barbarian God was like a death row prison. There were no doors or windows, and there was no way out. No matter how hard he tried, he still couldn't figure out how to escape. The divine thunder couldn't kill him and Little White. Similarly, he and Little White couldn't leave. Half a year later, when Rue the Iron brought the ding of Barbarian God out of the small battlefield, both he and Little White would die. The day when the ding of Barbarian God was opened would probably be filled with the most powerful barbarians. Boom, boom, boom. The divine thunder never stopped. After being struck by the divine thunder for a few days, Little White's injuries didn't worsen. Instead, it seemed to have formed a thick layer of defense on its skin. When the divine thunder struck its body, it felt like it was tickling. Its 2 small eyes shone brightly, and lightning flashed from time to time. There seemed to be 1 or 2 mysterious characters, faintly discernible, looking particularly terrifying. How do we escape? Luli was still thinking about it. There were only 2 ways to get out of the ding of Barbarian God. One was to break the ding of Barbarian God, and the other was to find a way to get Rue the Iron to let him out. Only violence could be used to break the cauldron. Schemes were useless. Luli's strongest attack was his blood claw. It was impossible for him to increase his attack power in a short time. The blood claw was a bloodline divine skill. He did not have the secret arts of the Liu and Jiang families, so he could not increase the power of his bloodline. Let Rue the Iron let him out? This was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. Rue the Iron was not an idiot. In fact, he was very smart. Even if they couldn't kill him, they would still trap him until he left the small battlefield and went to the barbarians' territory. Only then would they let him out. What to do? Luli was in deep thoughts. His eyebrows were knitted together. He could not get over his anxiety. Little White, on the other hand, was still hopping around happily, chasing after every thunderbolt. None of them fell. Still alive? Another day passed. Rue the Iron told the barbarians to stop releasing energy of thunderbolts. He walked closer to the ding of Barbarian God and checked with psychic power. A glint of rage rose in his bell-like eyes when he saw Little White and Luli were still alive and kicking. 3 more days and nights. He would not believe it. He planned to blast for 7 days and nights. If he still could not kill Luli and Little White after 7 days and nights, then he would be at his wit's end. He would have to wait for half a year and then bring the ding of Barbarian God back to the northern land of barbarians and let the powerful barbarians kill Luli and Little White. Go on. Rue the Iron stopped watching. He walked back to the base camp by himself. He told the barbarians to keep releasing energy of thunderbolts while he waited for 7 days and nights. Since Little White couldn't die after 4 days, it wouldn't die after a few more days. After 7 days and nights, the barbarians all stopped releasing energy of thunderbolts. Towards the end, many barbarians took turns to release energy of thunderbolts. They were exhausted both physically and mentally after releasing energy of thunderbolts for several days and nights. When the time came, all the barbarians stopped. They sat on the ground in exhaustion, staring at the ding of Barbarian God on the ground. Many barbarians widened their eyes in bewilderment. That human monster was truly a monster. He hadn't died after being bombarded for 7 days and 7 nights. Bang, bang, bang. Rue the Iron walked out from the base camp in strides. He walked to the center of the ground, picked up the ding of Barbarian God with one hand, and checked with psychic power. Soon, the light in his eyes died down, and his face was clouded. A ray of black glare came out from his hand. The thunderbolts in the ding of Barbarian God stopped, and peace returned. Rue the Iron gave up on killing Lu Li and Little White. He planned to bring them back to the northern land of barbarians after half a year and let the powerful barbarians deal with them. He had no other choice. The ding of Barbarian God was glowing. Under Rue the Iron's control, all the inhibition formations stopped. The inside of the ding of Barbarian God was dark. Squeak, squeak, Little White squatted in a corner and shouted, dissatisfied. Seeing that the thunderbolts stopped, Lu Li stood up, made up his mind, took out his divine weapon of Dragon King, and hacked at the iron wall again. Clank, 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 sparks came out, and the iron wall let out a muffled sound. The ding of Barbarian God was not damaged or scratched. Lu Li swung the divine weapon in anger and hacked at the iron wall several times. Then, he leaped up and smashed at the lid of the ding of Barbarian God. Still, it was futile. A mocking voice came out. It was Rue the Iron's voice. Human bastard, don't waste your energy. The ding of Barbarian God is a quasi-relic made by our forefather. You want to crack it? Dream on. Lu Li put away the divine weapon of Dragon King. His blood claw came out, and he scratched at the iron wall again and again. Unfortunately, there was only one spark each time. The runes on the iron wall glowed, but it was not damaged. Ha ha ha, dying struggle. Rue the Iron's mocking voice came out again. Human bastard, when we get back to the northern land of barbarians, I will ask the powerful warriors of my race to turn you into a puppet. I will turn you into a walking dead and enslave you forever. Ha ha ha. Rue the Iron's laughter echoed in the ding of Barbarian God. His voice was so loud that Lu Li's eardrums hurt. Squeak, squeak. Whitey, who was on the ground, was a little unhappy. It bared its teeth and cried out a few times. Its small body leaped up and actually stuck onto the cauldron lid. It then opened its small mouth and bit down on the lid. What happened next shocked Lu Li and Rue the Iron. How hard was the lid of the ding of Barbarian God? However, Little White managed to crack it. Then, Little White continued to bite, and a small hole was made. Swish, swish, the lid of the cauldron instantly shone brightly, and lightning arcs flickered within. But soon, the light dimmed and grew dimmer. Okay. Lu Li's eyes were glaring. He stomped on the ground and flew up. He swung his fist and punched at the lid of the tripod with force. Boom! Chapter 511. Little White's teeth had always been sharp, the sharpest that Lu Li had ever seen. Little White could bite through a 5-layered fate wheel easily. Lu Li believed there was nothing that Little White couldn't bite through. But that didn't include Quasi-Relic. Quasi-Relic was extremely hard. Lu Li's blood claw couldn't even leave a scratch on it. How hard was it? Little White had done something amazing today. It could bite a hole through a Quasi-Relic. Lu Li didn't know how Little White did it, but he couldn't worry now. He had been through many life-and-death battles, so he could react fast. He had no time to think about this. How could he let go of such a good chance? Whoosh! Lu Li dashed out like a mad dragon. As soon as he got out of the ding of Barbarian God, he used psychic power to check the surroundings. When he saw Rue the Iron, who was in shock, Lu Li used his psychic power as a sharp knife to stab at Rue the Iron's soul pond without any hesitation. At the same time, Lu Li divided himself into more than 60 Lu Li and flew toward Rue the Iron. The inhibition formation on the ding of Barbarian God was broken, so it could not shrink anymore. It reverted to its original size and fell to the ground. Rue the Iron was holding the ding of Barbarian God, but he couldn't hold on any longer. He stepped back. Rue the Iron came back to his senses after Lu Li flew out. However, Lu Li's knife of psychic power had pierced into his soul. The last thing Rue the Iron saw was Lu Li's blood claw getting closer and closer. Rue the Iron's soul was in chaos. He sensed a fatal danger from the depth of his soul. Out of instinct, he shouted, "Don't kill me. I surrender. I surrender." The ding of barbarian god was Rue, the iron's most powerful means. Now that the ding of barbarian god was cracked, Rue, the iron, knew his limits. If he didn't do something, he would become a dead body the next second. Lu Li's eyes were cold. He didn't show any emotion. His psychic power surged into Rue, the iron's soul pond, and his blood claw reached for Rue, the iron's head. Swish, swish. The horns on Rue, the iron's head glowed with thunderbolts. But he didn't attack Lu Li. Instead, he poured thunderbolts into his head to crush Lu Li's knife of psychic power and protect his head. Lu Li went behind Rue, the iron, and clawed at his back with his blood claw. How sharp were the blood claws? It easily pierced Rue's back and went straight for his heart. As long as Rue's heart was crushed, he would still die. Rue, the iron, let out a blood-curdling scream. Only then did the surrounding barbarians wake up. They were all scared out of their wits. Rue, the iron, was a descendant of the barbarian royal family. To them, he was a supreme prince. If Rue, the iron, died, they would not be able to live. Swish! Many barbarians swarmed over. The horns on their heads glowed as they were ready to shoot out thunderbolts. They might not be able to kill Lu Li, but they could at least stop him from killing Rue, the iron. Everyone stop! Rue, the iron, roared. One had to admit that he was a very intelligent person. If this group of barbarians attacked, he would be completely finished. Before the barbarians' thunderbolts reached him, his heart had been crushed by Lu Li. At the moment of life and death, Rue, the iron, saw the huge ding of barbarian god. He rolled his eyes and shouted, "Human, don't kill me. I will give you the ding of barbarian god. As long as you don't kill me, I can repair the ding of barbarian god and give you this quasi-relic." Lu Li's blood claw had grabbed Rue, the iron's heart. One gentle touch, and that huge heart would explode. Lu Li was moved by Rue, the iron's words. That was a quasi-relic. If he could have it, his abilities would soar. Lu Li had seen how horrifying the ding of barbarian god was. Even average human sovereign realm warriors would be killed if they were sucked in. Lu Li's eyes flickered, and he kept his psychic power on Rue, the iron. If Rue, the iron, made any strange move, Lu Li would crush his heart. Lu Li thought about it and shouted, "Tell all barbarians to retreat for 30 miles. Leave none alive." Rue, the iron, was delighted. What he did was wise. If he had used thunderbolts to attack Lu Li, and if he didn't stop the barbarians from attacking, he would be dead by now. Rue, the iron, bellowed. After a moment of hesitation, the barbarians retreated like tide water. None of them were left. Rue, the iron, was sincere. His limbs were well developed, but he was smart and fearful of death. His back was still bleeding, but he didn't mind. He didn't dare to do anything. He said in a deep voice, "Okay, human, my people have left. I can give you the quasi-relic. I only want to live." Lu Li threw a glance to the rounding. Seeing the hole in the lid that little white bit out, Lu Li frowned and said, "The quasi-relic has been destroyed. How are you going to fix it? Also, the ding of barbarian god is the most valuable treasure of your race. Are you willing to give it to me?" "Ha." Rue, the iron, forced a smile and said, "If I die, you will have the ding of barbarian god anyway. My warriors cannot kill you. Since it is destined that you will have the ding of barbarian god, why don't I trade it for my life? We have several more of such quasi-relic. If I lose one, I will only be punished when I go back, but I won't be sentenced to death. You humans have a saying, better to live than to die. Only by living can there be hope, right?" Lu Li thought about it, but didn't know what to say. This barbarian with well-developed limbs was more meticulous than humans. He was something. Lu Li thought about it and asked again, "How are you going to fix the ding of barbarian god? If I'm lying, then you can go and meet your god of Berserker's ancestor." Lu Li had been keeping his psychic power on Rue, the iron. Rue, the iron, knew very well that if he said anything wrong or did anything wrong, Lu Li would really go and meet the god of barbarian. Taking a deep breath, Rue, the iron, said, "If the body of the ding of barbarian god is damaged, Not even my father or the current god of barbarian can fix it, let alone me. Only the lid is destroyed. I have a way to fix it. I have the materials to fix it with me. I can fix it after a day of refinement with thunderbolts. But, Rue the Iron continued after a pause, I can fix the ding of barbarian god, but I want you to make a heaven reverse blood oath. I will fix the ding of barbarian god, and you must not kill me. I promise that I will never leave the base camp of the god of barbarian. I will go back to the barbarian land of the north after half a year. The Heaven Reverse Blood Oath was the most solemn oath in the Heaven Reverse universe. It was more important for humans. The oath could not be made at will. If it was broken, the human would be punished by Emperor of Heaven Reverse and be turned into ashes. It didn't matter whether Rue the Iron was killed or not. If he could get the ding of barbarian god intact, he could let him go. Luli was afraid that this was a plot by Rue the Iron. After all, this barbarian was smarter and more cunning than average humans. Luli thought about it and said, break off the spiritual connection with the ding of barbarian god. I need to dissolve the ding of barbarian god first. When you fix the lid, you must be 30 miles away from here. There could be no barbarians within a radius of 30 miles. Also, I will let Little White sneak into your body. If you do anything, Little White will crush your heart. If you promise me, I can spare your life. Chapter 512. The spiritual imprint on the ding of barbarian god disappeared. Luli put the body of the ding of barbarian god away and asked Little White to sneak in through his hand. He asked Little White to go in because it was not afraid of lightning. Even if Rue the Iron would sneak up on Little White could stand it and then crush Rue the Iron's heart. What was more, Luli was nearby. He kept his psychic power on Rue the Iron. If Rue the Iron were to do something, Luli could kill him. Rue the Iron behaved himself. He took a pellet to stop the bleeding and followed Luli to the distance with the ding of barbarian god. They were too close to the base camp of the barbarian race. Luli was afraid that Rue the Iron would do something, so he wanted to go further away. Luli asked Rue the Iron to lead the way while he followed him and kept his psychic power on him. Dozens of miles later, they ran into a group of barbarians. Before Luli could say anything, Rue the Iron told the barbarians to step back. There was a small beast hiding near his heart. Rue the Iron didn't dare to do anything. That small beast could bite the ding of barbarian god into pieces. Rue the Iron was terrified of Little White. They arrived at a small valley. Luli saw that everything was ready, so he asked Rue the Iron to repair the ding of barbarian god. Rue the Iron behaved himself. He took out some black minerals from his interspatial ring and released thunderbolts to repair the lid. When Rue the Iron was releasing thunderbolts, Luli was the most nervous. After all, Little White was in his body. What if Rue the Iron tried to attack Little White? Luckily, Rue the Iron didn't do anything rash. He focused on repairing the lid, melting the minerals with thunderbolts, and filling up the hole bit by bit. Time moved on. Luli didn't let his guard down. He kept his psychic power on Rue the Iron, ready to invade his soul pond at any time. After half a day, half of the hole was filled up. Rue the Iron didn't do anything else. He continued to repair the lid. It was quiet. None of the barbarians dared to come closer. One day later, the hole on the lid had been filled up, but Rue the Iron didn't stop. He kept on releasing thunderbolts. After 4 to 6 hours, the cauldron lid flashed with a black light. Rue the Iron opened his eyes and said, "All right, the cauldron lid has been repaired. All you need to do is refine the lid and the cauldron body, and this demigod equipment will be yours." Luli nodded and said, "Throw the lid over." Rue the Iron shook his head and said, "Swear it first. Otherwise, I'd rather destroy this cauldron lid." Making a vow was easy. Luli followed Rue the Iron's instructions and solemnly made a heaven reverse blood oath. Luli was careful about the content of the oath. He meant that he had spared Rue the Iron this time, but that didn't mean he would never kill him again. Rue the Iron was relieved. He got up and threw the lid to Luli. Luli took over the lid and checked with psychic power. Making sure that Rue the Iron spiritual mark was gone, Luli nodded with satisfaction and said, "Okay, you can go now. I'm a man of my words. I will spare your life this time. Little White, come out." Shio. Rue the Iron's back was already scarred, but Little White scratched another bloody hole. Little White flew back. Rue the Iron grimaced in pain. "Human, I admit defeat. I will work hard on cultivation when I go back. Next time I see you at the demon-slaying grounds, I will kill you." "Ha ha ha." Luli laughed. He released his fate wheel and flew to the distance. He said, "Little barbarian, next time, bring me another quasi-relic and I will spare your life." Luli was gone. Rue the Iron's face was clouded over. He waved his fists in rage and leveled a stone hill nearby to the ground. But after a while, he sneered and said, "Idiot human, the ding of barbarian god is made by our forefather. So what if you have it? If you are not a barbarian, you will not be able to melt it down. It will be a pile of scrap iron even if you have it." Phew, phew. Luli flew on with Little White. Along the way, they ran into some barbarians. Those barbarians ran away as soon as they saw Luli. They didn't dare to fight with him. Luli stopped. He flew for an hour before he went into a cave and gasped for air. He was both excited and exhausted. He felt he had been on the verge of death these days. He was under so much pressure during the 7 days and nights that he almost broke down. He didn't expect that because of Little White's escape, he had obtained the quasi-relic ding of barbarian god. "Little White, I really have to thank you this time." Luli grabbed Little White from his shoulder. Looking at its burnt skin, he exclaimed, "Little White, you are awesome. You can bite through a quasi-relic." Squeak, squeak, Little White raised its head proudly. Its eyes were filled with disdain, as if it was telling Luli that it was just a piece of cake and not worth mentioning. Luli thought about it and asked, "Little White, is it because you have consumed divine energy that your defense is so strong? Is it because of divine energy that your teeth are so sharp?" Little White lowered its head as if it was thinking. After a while, it nodded and then shook its head. Luli was confused. He thought for a moment, then asked tentatively, "Is it related to divine power, or is it related to the lightning?" Little White nodded like a chick pecking at grains. Luli had a vague idea. Little White's improvement must have something to do with the refinement of thunderbolts for 7 days and nights. Of course, it must have something to do with divine energy as well. The refinement of divine energy and thunderbolts had improved Little White's abilities. Luli could not imagine how sharp Little White's teeth must be to be able to bite through a quasi-relic. Ding of barbarian god. Luli sat for a while to recover some energy. He found a spacious place in the cave and took out the ding of barbarian god to work on it. Just now, he wanted to take control of the body of the ding of barbarian god, but he was afraid that Rue the Iron would sneak up on him. He just put the ding of barbarian god into his interspatial ring. Then he took out the lid of the ding of barbarian god and put the lid and the body together. He turned it over and put his hands on the body. He poured Xian energy into the ding of barbarian god, trying to take control of the ding of barbarian god. Buzzing. As soon as Xian energy was poured in, the entire ding of barbarian god glowed in a faint black light. Luli was inspired, and he went on. However, Luli had been pouring Xian energy for 2 hours. The ding of barbarian god was still glowing in a faint black light. Apart from that, nothing happened. What was going on? Luli stopped pouring Xian energy. Usually, when Xian energy was poured into a Xian artifact, the Xian artifact would react gradually. This quasi-relic might be hard to take control, but there should be some reaction. Why hadn't there been any changes after refining it for 2 hours? Luli couldn't figure it out after a while. He was exhausted. He went to the innermost part of the cave, asked Little White to guard him, and fell asleep. He slept for a day and a night. Luli was woken up by some footsteps. The footsteps were heavy. Clearly, some barbarians were passing by. Luli felt refreshed. He drank some water and ate some food. Little White was sleeping nearby. Luli put Little White back into his sleeve and rushed to the spacious place. He took out the ding of barbarian god to continue. Half a day later, Luli opened his eyes. He looked awful. He was sure that he could not take control of the ding of barbarian god. He had been tricked by Rue the Iron. Luli stood up with strong, killing intent. He put away the ding of barbarian god and rushed out of the cave toward the base camp of the barbarians. Chapter 5:13. Many barbarians almost burst into tears when they saw Luli standing outside the base camp of the barbarian race. Rue the Iron was not surprised at all, because he knew Luli would come back if he couldn't take control of the ding of barbarian god. However, he disguised himself well. With a furious expression, he yelled, "Human, don't cross the line. You've already taken my ding of barbarian god, and I told my people not to go out. What are you doing here?" Luli stood outside the base camp coldly and said, "Rue the Iron, why did I come back? You should know that I will kill all the barbarians if you dare to trick me. I will ask Little White to gnaw a hole in your head. I made a blood oath not to kill you, but it doesn't mean Little White can't kill you." Squeak, squeak, Little White sneaked out from Luli's sleeve. Its small eyes were filled with coldness, which made Rue the Iron shiver. Rue the Iron thought about it and said at once, "Human, I am not tricking you. Don't do anything stupid. Let's talk." Luli said coldly, "I cannot take control of the ding of barbarian god. Are you up to something?" "What can I be up to?" Rue the Iron said with bitterness. Then he came to his senses and said, "Right, human. The ding of barbarian god was made by our forefather, the god of barbarian, with thunderbolts from the 9 heavens. To take control of it, we will need thunderbolts. When we do it, we pour in thunderbolts. You cannot. Maybe there's no thunderbolts. You could try to learn a profound meaning related to thunderbolts, and you'll be able to take control of it." Rue the Iron didn't hide anything this time because he was afraid of Little White. The little beast was not afraid of thunderbolts. Not even thunderbolts could kill it. How strong its defense was. Its teeth could crush Quasi-Relic. If Little White could bite Luli's body, his head would be bitten off. To take control of the ding of barbarian god, Shin energy and thunderbolts were needed. Rue the Iron had pointed out the way. If Luli could learn a profound meaning related to thunderbolts, then Rue the Iron would have no other way. However, profound meanings were not that easy to learn. He could learn any profound meaning he wanted. As long as Luli could not learn the profound meaning related to thunder, he would not be able to control the ding of barbarian god. Luli stared into Rue the Iron's eyes. Making sure that he was not lying, Luli snorted and said, "I will find a way to get the energy of thunderbolts. If I cannot, I will ask Little White to kill you." "Shio!" Luli turned around and left with his saber on his back. The barbarians behind him began to curse loudly. Luli stopped and threw them a cold glance. The barbarians shut their mouths at once. It was so quiet that even a pin drop could be heard. To the barbarian god, Luli was no different from a god of death. Not even the ding of barbarian god could kill him or trap him. Who else in this small world could kill him? Shio! Luli leaped up and disappeared into the mountains in the distance. Rue Iron let out a long sigh. He realized that the barbarians' base camp was no longer safe. If that little critter really rushed in, would he be able to stop it? Luli flew away with Little White. He didn't ride on his fate wheel. Flying would consume Shin energy and energy. It would be more comfortable if there were no enemies. Squeak, squeak, Little White suddenly jumped on a Luli's shoulder and kept squeaking. Luli didn't understand what Little White was doing. He looked at it in confusion. Little White squeaked for a while and then flew to his interspatial ring. It pouted at the interspatial ring. Then the 2 brown horns on its head lit up and there were electric arcs glistening. Luli was surprised. Little White could release thunderbolts? It had never shown its ability in this aspect before. Can it be that it has been struck by thunderbolts for so many times that Little White's horns have stored some energy of thunderbolts? Luli murmured with doubt. Then an idea came to his mind. He asked, "Little White, do you mean that you can control the ding of barbarian god?" Squeak, squeak. Little White nodded happily. It seemed to be blaming Lu Li for taking so long to understand. Lu Li rolled his eyes. This little critter was a Xian beast. He had never heard that Xian beasts could refine Xian artifacts or use Xian artifacts. But since Little White was so confident, Lu Li was excited. He had always regarded Little White as his family, and it would never betray his family. If Little White could control the ding of Barbarian God, then it would be no different from him doing it. He found a cave nearby and found a spacious tunnel. He took out the ding of Barbarian God. Little White flew out at once. It squeezed the lid open and sneaked into the ding of Barbarian God. Buzzing. Little White stood in the center of the ding of Barbarian God. The horns on its head glistened with thunderbolts. Electric arcs were flying to all directions. Those electric arcs disappeared into the iron walls soon. Lu Li jumped onto the ding of Barbarian God. He glanced over and murmured in confusion, "Well, something is wrong. There are some runes glowing on Little White's horns. Is it using divine energy? How could there be runes glowing on regular thunderbolts?" The only explanation was that Little White had used divine energy. It wanted to use divine energy and thunderbolts to control the ding of Barbarian God. Lu Li stood on the ding of Barbarian God, holding his breath, looking at Little White releasing thunderbolts. Those electric arcs were different from those of the barbarian race. Their thunderbolts were black, while Little White's were pure white with some holy chi and energy. 2 hours, 4 hours, 6 hours. The ding of Barbarian God showed no reaction. Lu Li pulled a long face. It seemed that Little White could not control this ding of Barbarian God either. Little White seemed to be tired. It stopped and made some noises to Lu Li, pouting its lips. Lu Li understood. He took out some soul crystals and threw them down. Little White swallowed some soul crystals, rested for a while, and went back to releasing thunderbolts. Lu Li sat on the ding of Barbarian God and closed his eyes to cultivate to replenish his Xian energy and spirit. After he consumed some soul crystals, he began to cultivate Xian energy. Half a day, one day, Lu Li's mind was weighed down. He felt it was a pity. He had obtained a piece of treasure, but he could not control it or use it. It was frustrating. Learning profound meaning of thunderbolts? That was easier said than done. Profound meanings were not something that could be learned at will. Otherwise, everyone would be a powerful warrior. Take Jiang Hu's group, for example. There were only 3 people who had comprehended ultimacies, and they were all at a very low level. Jiang Qiling was so talented, but she didn't learn any profound meaning. After a while, Lu Li decided to leave it at that. He began to cultivate seriously. He planned to cultivate for 1 more day before he set off to kill alien races. 10 hours later, the ding of Barbarian God suddenly glared and shook violently. Lu Li, who was sitting on the ding of Barbarian God, fell off. At first, he thought he was being attacked by enemies. He used psychic power to check around, but found no enemies. Whoosh! Little White flew out from the ding of Barbarian God. The ding of Barbarian God suddenly flew up and shrank. In the end, it turned into a shadow and disappeared between Little White's eyebrows. Squeak, squeak! Little White shouted to Lu Li with a grin. It was eager to be praised, like a kid that had done something good and was waiting for its elders to praise it. "You have taken control?" Lu Li's shock turned into joy. He threw Little White into the air for several times before he asked with a laugh, "Little White, have you really taken control of the ding of Barbarian God?" Squeak, squeak! Little White raised its head proudly again, as if it was saying in silence that it was just a piece of cake and not worth mentioning. "Okay," Lu Li shouted, "control the ding of Barbarian God and suck me in. But don't use thunderbolts on me, or I will be blasted into smithereens." Buzzing, a small ding of Barbarian God appeared between Little White's eyebrows. The ding of Barbarian God expanded and floated in midair. The lid of the ding of Barbarian God was opened. Lu Li was sucked in at once. Then the lid closed, and Lu Li was trapped in the ding of Barbarian God again. Chapter 514. To the southeast of the small world, there was a huge mountain range. There were many caves which were intricate and extended in all directions. Average warriors would get lost in there. Thousands of feet underground, there were more than a dozen people sitting in a huge cave. There were males and females among them. They were dressed in luxurious robes and appeared to be extraordinary. There were some luminous pearls in the cave, and there was an underground river flowing. There were some tents by the river. It was a nice place to rest. There was a carpet on the riverside, and a few young men and young ladies were sitting around drinking. As they were drinking, a young man suddenly smashed his wine cup on the ground and shouted coldly, "We can't live like this anymore. We are the disciples of several noble families, but we were forced to hide in a cave for more than a month by a little brat. If this gets out, how can we raise our heads in the central province?" The young man's words caused the young men and women sitting around to have ugly expressions. Many of them had sullen looks in their eyes. A handsome young master with an evil look added, "Lady Mengtian, young Master Swan, are you exaggerating? Is Luli really that powerful? We're no match for him, even when we work together. How can an eternal realm warrior be so powerful? Even if he has learned a 7th or 8th rank profound meaning, I don't think we will lose." Lu Swan was calm and collected. He didn't say anything. Nobody could tell what was on his mind. Ji Mengtian, who was wearing a blue dress, was too beautiful to look at. She said bitterly, "I don't know the details, but since he could defeat the allied forces of the 4 alien races, he must be beyond the noble lord realm. We must be careful in case we fall into trouble. Luli will not care about anything when he is mad. He even killed a patriarch of the Lu family at the Mystic Armor City." That was right. The more than a dozen young masters and young ladies sitting here were Ji Mengtian, Dai Fei Yu, Lu Swan, Lu Enai, and Yang Xian. Luli had been wandering around outside for a long time, but he couldn't find them because they had been hiding here for a long time. This place was hundreds of feet underground with tunnels extending in all directions. The terrain was intricate. There was no way Luli could find them. Luli had defeated the allied forces of the 4 alien races on his own, and the 4 alien races had sent out their royal families. Inevitably, the young masters were scared. Fearing that Luli would seek revenge, they hid here. However, after hiding for more than a month, some people could not help but feel depressed. In the Central Plains, they could call the wind and summon the rain. They were aloof and aloof. They had never encountered such a stifling situation. Every time they stayed inside, they felt more and more unhappy, and the hostility in their hearts kept increasing. Bang! Yang Xian smashed the wine cup in his hand and stood up. "He dares to kill us? Give him 100 guts. Miss Mengtian, you have a quasi-relic, and we all have our own means. Why should we be afraid of him? Lady Fei Yu can also heal her injuries. Even if she is slightly injured, we can heal her immediately. As long as we arrange our tactics properly, we can easily destroy that kid. What do you guys think?" Ji Mengtian and Lu Swan looked at each other. There was a hidden smile in their eyes. Ji Mengtian said with a light smile, "Young Master Yang Xian, there is no doubt about your abilities. My willow vase may not be able to kill Lu Li, but I can protect myself." Dai Fei Yu blinked her eyes and said, "I'm fine with it, but I'm not responsible for attacking. I'm only responsible for healing your wounds." Lu Swan smiled. Looking at Yang Xian, he said, "Young Master Yang, you are powerful and heroic. I have always admired you. But, Lu Swan and I can only assist you. We cannot kill you. After all, Luli is my cousin. It will not be nice if people hear about this." Yang Xian felt he had been fooled when he saw so many people looking at him. Was Lu Swan and Ji Mengtian waiting for him to jump into a trap? Yang Xian had made up his mind. He had to make up his mind and say, "Okay, you will assist me. I will bring someone with me to kill that bastard. You are afraid of Lu Renhuang's revenge, but I am not. Then what are we waiting for? Let's go." Lu Swan stood up, waved his hand, and said, "Pack up and go. Send someone to find out Lu Li's whereabouts." Whoosh, whoosh, warriors of different families packed up at once. They were fast. In the time for 2 incense sticks to burn, they were done. Yang Xian curled his lips. Again, He felt he had been fooled. Ji Mingtian and Lu Xuan kept telling him to hide. Were they trying to provoke his arrogance and anger so that he could take the initiative to deal with Lu Li? Let's go. Yang Xian had been suppressing his anger for days. He couldn't care less now. They flew out of the cave, and in the time for several incense sticks to burn, they were out of the mountain. Smelling the fresh air that they hadn't smelled for a long time cheered them up. Lu Xuan and Ji Mingtian waved their hands. Their warriors rushed out to check the surroundings. Whoosh, whoosh, a warrior came back after a while and reported, "There are some of the voodoo race over there. Charge!" Yang Xian could vent his anger on the voodoo race warriors. He dashed over with his warriors like a mad dragon. Dai Feiyu followed him closely. Ji Mingtian and Lu Xuan slowed down on purpose. Ji Mingtian asked Lu Xuan quietly, "Is everything ready? More or less?" Lu Xuan smiled and said, "We are just waiting for Lu Li to show up. Let Yang Xian go, and we will watch from a distance. My uncle, the human sovereign realm, is a genius. I haven't heard from him for years, but I don't want to piss him off. Ha ha." Ji Mingtian smiled sweetly and said, "Lu Xuan, of the younger generation, you are the most terrifying. I'm lucky that I'm not your enemy, or else I wouldn't even know how I died because of you." Lu Xuan smiled and looked at Ji Mingtian with admiration in his eyes. He said, "Lady Ji, how can you be Bai's enemy? Bai has always been in love with you. He can scheme against everyone in the world, but not against you. You see, for so many years, you have been openly pursuing Miss Ji. Has he ever used any petty tricks? Is that so?" Ji Mingtian smiled brightly like a peony. She flew away and looked back with a smile. "Young Master Bai, if you can defeat Lu Li and kill the other one, it will be enough to prove that you're the most powerful young master in the world. It is enough to prove that you are the most powerful young master in the world. Mingtian will consider it carefully." Lu Xuan nodded and said, "I will not let you down. Please wait and see." Ha, ha, ha. Ji Mingtian let out a bell-like smile and flew forward. Lu Xuan and the other young masters were all envious of her slim figure. Lu Xuan kicked on the ground and flew away with the others. But he looked to the west. The smile on his face grew colder as he said, "Lu Li, my cousin, I am sorry. It is not that Bai does not care about our brotherhood. It is just that there can only be one beast king among all the beasts in the forest. Your grandpa defeated my grandpa and became the family patriarch. Now, our branch is in control. We will not allow the power to fall to someone else. Only when you are dead will Uncle Ren Wang come out. We will not be able to eat or sleep in peace as long as he is not here. Also, how can I prove that I am the best young master in the Lu family if you are alive? How can I prove that I am the most suitable one to lead the Lu family to glory? Don't worry. I will make the Lu family more glorious. I will surpass the Samsara Palace and become the most powerful family of the Central Plains. I am confident." Chapter 515. In a bare mountain range, a young man with a saber on his back was moving forward. His steps were light. Every time he jumped, he would jump to the top of a hill and then jump down again. It had been 10 days since Lu Li left the base camp of the barbarian race. Rui the Iron had ordered the barbarians not to leave the base camp. Naturally, Lu Li would not kill his way into the base camp. If he did, his abilities would be weakened. Even though he could send Little White in, what if Little White's speed and defense were weakened as well? Lu Li dared not to take the risk. Lu Li wandered around, looking for alien races to kill. He chose to go north where there was a base camp of the Feather Race. Theoretically speaking, there should be many Feather Race warriors there. He ran into many alien races in 10 days, including the Feather Race, the Asmodeans, and the Voodoo Race. Almost all of them were killed by him. Lu Li didn't even have to take poison protection pellets to kill the Voodoo Race. He just had to release soul attacks from a distance and then release Xian energy to kill them. The most horrifying thing about the Voodoo Race was their voodoo poison and bewitching insects. It would take time for the Voodoo Race to spread out, and Little White could deter the bewitching insects. The defense of the voodoo race was weak. Xian energy could kill them easily. There were fewer alien races. But Luli had killed many by himself, and there were human warriors everywhere. It was not surprising that there were fewer alien races. The entrances to the 4 alien races must have been closed by now. No more reinforcements could be sent out. Killing one would mean one less. On the way, Luli saw bodies of alien races as well as some human bodies. He saw some small hills. Luli checked with psychic power and found that there were bodies of alien races or humans buried in them. The small battlefield was a cruel place. When alien races and humans ran into each other, a war would break out immediately. Life was fragile here. The blood feud between the 4 races and the human race was already as deep as the sea, and it could never be resolved. With each killing, this hatred would only deepen. Boom, boom, boom. For hours later, Luli ran into several more Asmodeans, which he killed easily. Luli loathed the Asmodeans the most because they were ugly and their means were sinister. They would sneak into the ground or sneak into the air to assassinate. Not only did they use poison, but their weapons would also be poisoned. Luli even ran into an Asmodean that had learned a low-level, profound meaning, which was dark and evil. Several hours later, Luli found a small river and decided to take a rest. Luli took a bath, drank some water, and ate some food. Then he sat with his legs crossed to replenish his physical strength and Xian energy. From the distance came a slight noise. Luli's psychic power was so strong that he looked over at once. He saw a cowardly human hiding behind a small hill, peeking at him. Xiao! Luli's psychic power was noticed. Luli's expressions changed. He dashed away like a rat on the street. If it were an average human, Luli would not make things difficult for him. But this man was sneaking around. Clearly, he was up to no good. Xiao! Luli flew over in a blur. His fate wheel appeared in midair, and he dashed on in a blur. Luli was faster than a warrior at the initial stage of the human sovereign realm when he was at the top of his speed. That warrior was just an average warrior of the noble lord realm. How could he escape? In a time for just a dozen breaths, Luli had caught up with the warrior. Luli didn't waste any time. He released his soul attack, and the warrior stopped moving. Luli drew his saber from his back and put on the warrior's neck. He poured Xian energy into the divine weapon of Dragon King. It was so cold. Needless to say, if Luli used too much force, the warrior's head would be cut off. Luli stopped using psychic power. That man opened his eyes and saw the cold saber on his neck. He felt weak in the knees. He dropped to his knees and said in fear, "Young Master Lu, please spare my life. I didn't mean to peep at you. I was just passing by." Luli didn't believe in such nonsense. In this small world, one person was practically courting death. Usually, several people would form teams to hunt alien races. Also, this man was sneaking around and ran away as soon as Luli noticed him. Clearly, there was something wrong. Whoosh! Luli swung his saber across the warrior's scalp and cut off a strand of hair. Then, Luli put the saber on the warrior's neck again. Crack! Crack! The warrior's teeth were chattering. He said at once, "Young Master Lu, please spare my life." Luli said coldly after a pause, "I will ask, and you will answer. I will cut off your ears if you lie to me. If you lie to me, I will cut off your nose. If you lie to me, I will cut off your head." The warrior nodded. He was too afraid to breathe. Cold sweat trickled down his forehead. Luli asked emotionlessly, "Name, which family are you from?" The warrior answered at once, "Chun Chun, from the Chun family at the southwest Central Plains. Well, we are a 6th-rank family affiliated with the Samsara Palace." Samsara Palace? Luli put on a meaningful smile. The image of a beautiful lady came to his mind. He looked into Chun Chen's eyes and said, "Now, when I ask questions, you cannot think. You must answer as fast as you can, or I will cut off your ears." Chun Chen nodded. Luli said, "Age, 24. Are you married?" "Yes." "How many from the Chun family came this time?" "4. "How many died?" "2. "Did Jimeng Tian send them to find me?" "Yes, no." Luli played a word game and got the answer out of Chun Chen. Chun Chen turned pale. After a pause, he looked at Lu Li with a bitter smile and said, "Young Master Lu, we are small fries. The feud between you and Lady Ji has nothing to do with us. You know that the Chun family is a small force compared to the Samsara Palace. We cannot afford to offend you. I hope you can be generous and let me go this time." Lu Li nodded and said coldly, "I will not make things difficult for you. Take me to Ji Mengtian. You can leave when we are close. I promise you that I will not tell anyone that it was you who led the way." Chen Shun pulled a long face. He shook his head and said, "But I don't know where Lady Ji is." Whoosh! Lu Li swung his saber at Chun Chen's nose. Chun Chen trembled in fear. If Lu Li's saber were a bit closer, Chun Chen's nose would be gone. Lu Li looked at Chun Chen coldly and said, "I don't like to waste time. Don't insult my intelligence. Lead the way or not. Just say the word." "Yes." Chun Chen made up his mind and said. He added, "Lady Ji, young Master Lu Swan, young Master Lu and I, Yang Xian and Lady Dai Fei Yu are hiding in an underground cave. We have people outside the cave. So, I can only take you to a place 30 miles away from the cave." Underground cave? Lu Li put on a cold smile. No wonder he couldn't find them after such a long time. They were hiding. Ji Mingtian, Lu Swan, Lu and I, Yang Xian and Dai Fei Yu, they're all here. A glint of killing intent rose in Lu Li's eyes. They were hiding from him. Clearly, they had a guilty conscience. They must have been involved in the scheme to set them up last time. Now they could all be in one pot. "Let's go. Show me the way." Lu Li put away his saber and kicked Chun Chen away. Lu Li didn't worry about a warrior at the middle stage of the Noble Lord realm. Killing Chun Chen was as easy as pie. Whoosh! Chapter 516. Lu Li and Chun Chen walked for 6 days, mainly because Chun Chen was too slow. Of course, Lu Li didn't dare to walk too fast either. After a while, he would take a break to let his strength and spirit return to the peak. After traveling for 6 days, they encountered many outsiders and humans. As usual, they killed all of the outsiders. Lu Li didn't want to reveal his whereabouts. Therefore, he took a detour as soon as he saw humans. At this moment, the two of them had arrived at the northeast side of the small world. This was the territory of the Sorcerer Tribe. However, there were not many Sorcerer Tribe members here. There would probably be more if they went to their base camp. Lu Li's target this time was Ji Mingtian and the others. He would not go after the voodoo race. He and Chun Chen walked for another 2 days and arrived at a mountain range. Chun Chen stopped and pointed to the front, saying, "Walk 100 miles and you'll reach it. There are many caves there. Find a cave with a big tree beside it and go in. Walk to the right at the fork in the road and rush downwards to find Miss G and the others. But there are dark guards waiting outside. I'm not sure how many there are." "Are you sure you're not lying to me? You know the consequences of lying to me." Lu Li looked at Chun Chen coldly and said with killing intent, "The exit of the small world will only open in a month or 2. If I find out that you have lied to me, I will find you even if I have to search the entire small world to kill you." I wouldn't dare," Chun Chen quickly said in fear. "How would I dare to lie to young Master Lu? I don't want to die yet. I only hope that young Master Lu won't say that I was the one who led the way. Otherwise, I'll definitely die." "All right, get lost." Lu Li waved his hand. Chun Chen left as if he had been pardoned. Lu Li didn't run towards the south right away. Instead, he followed Chun Chen quietly. Chun Chen dashed toward the south like a frightened rabbit, not daring to stop for even a moment. He didn't do anything else. Lu Li was relieved after following him for dozens of miles. Lu Li left and sneaked back to the cave. Along the way, he kept his psychic power as far as he could. Moreover, it was very covert, like a cool breeze blowing past, probing the nearby hidden scouts. After the time it took for 3 incense sticks to burn, he found the cave. There was a towering tree at the entrance of the cave, blocking the entrance. There were 3 martial artists hiding in the tree and in the nearby ravine. Everything was as Chun Chen had said. More importantly, Lu Li had seen the warrior hiding in the tree before. He was from the Ji family. "Very good. Luli believed Chun Chen's words completely. Ji Mingtian and the others were hiding in there. He still didn't approach rashly. He circled around the area, and after confirming that there were only 3 scouts, he quietly approached the cave. His spiritual will quietly swept towards the 2 people in the ravine. Then, thousands of soul golden needles pierced through the ravine crazily, shocking the souls of the 2 people. His body shot out, and the divine weapon of Dragon King appeared. He swung it at the back of their heads. Just as it was about to hit the back of their heads, the divine weapon of Dragon King flipped over. He used the blade to smack the heads of the 2 men. Their bodies were sent flying. The back of their heads was covered in blood, and they fainted immediately. At the last moment, Luli chose to suppress his murderous intent and didn't kill the 2. Every debt had its debtor. He wanted to make trouble for Ji Mingtian and the others, so he didn't mind killing the warriors from small families. From a tree came a sound of surprise. Before he could do anything, many soul golden needles pierced into his soul pond. Luli flew over on his fate wheel and smashed at the back of the man's head as well. Whoosh! At the entrance of the cave, Luli didn't dare to linger for fear that Ji Mingtian and the others would notice and run away. He sped up to the limit and dashed into the huge cave on his fate wheel. After flying for more than 3 miles, there was a fork in the path. Luli rushed to the right. The path was extending downwards and it was getting narrower. After a while, Luli put away his fate wheel and rushed on with Xian energy. At the same time, he released his psychic power to check the surroundings. The path extended downwards. Luli rushed on for more than 3 miles. Suddenly, a glint of coldness rose in his eyes. This was because there was a massive cave ahead. Within the cave, there were all sorts of tents, delicacies, and a few night pearls, illuminating the cave. But that was not the point. What was important was that there was a teleportation formation in the cave. At the moment, the teleportation formation was glowing. When Luli checked with psychic power, he happened to see more than a dozen people leaving. Soon, the teleportation formation fell apart, just like the day Ji Mingtian was teleported away. There is one more. Luli used psychic power to check the cave and found someone hiding in a corner. Luli was enraged. He dashed over, and his psychic power rained down like thousands of golden needles. Damn it, that bitch got away again. Luli dashed into the cave in anger, ready to interrogate the warrior that didn't have time to run away. However, as soon as Luli dashed into the cave, the ground suddenly glowed, and a surge of horrifying chi and energy enveloped him. An inhibition formation? Luli looked into the ground and saw many formation stones. There was a formation here? Oh no, I can't use my Xian energy. Luli suddenly realized that he was slowed down. Before he could react, the core formation stone on the ground glowed, and a blue shield appeared, trapping him inside. Then, a surge of horrifying gravity pressed down on his shoulders. He lost his balance and dropped to one knee. He supported himself with one hand and clenched his teeth. The gravity is so strong. It must be hundreds of thousands of times stronger than normal. Luli grimaced and groaned. He looked around and released his psychic power, ready to check. But soon, he realized that his psychic power could not penetrate the blue shield. Rustle, 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 from the distance came some footsteps. When Luli saw a group of people coming from another tunnel, he was filled with anger and killing intent. Lu Xuan, Lu Ni, Ji Mingtian, Yang Xian, Dai Fei Yu. Good. Luli put on a cruel smile and sighed to himself. He had fallen into a trap. He had been tricked once again. Clearly, Chen Shun was a pawn whose purpose was to lure Luli here. Lu Xuan and the others had built a formation here, and then sent someone to lure Luli here. Over the past month, Lu Xuan and the others had disappeared not only to hide from Luli, but also to build this formation. Luli seemed to be familiar with this method. He stared at Lu Xuan, who was walking on the side. Luli's smile grew colder and colder. No wonder his cousin was the most powerful young master of the young generation of the Lu family. He was very good at scheming. Ji Mingtian and Yang Xian walked in the middle. Today, Ji Mingtian was wearing a black silk tube dress that accentuated her perfect figure. With a gentle smile on her face, she walked over slowly like a noble queen, graceful and elegant. In the cave, he looked at Lu Li and said, "Young Master Lu, we meet again." Chapter 517. Even Dai Feiyu and the others could not stand Yang Xian's vicious words. Lu Xuan, on the other hand, didn't mind. His face was always calm, and he always had a smile on his face. No one could tell whether he was happy or angry. He was shrewd beyond his age. He didn't seem to be a young man in his 20s, but an old man that had lived for thousands of years. Lu Xuan shook his head and said, "Young Master Xian, even though Lu Li is exiled from the Lu family, he still has the blood of the Lu family in his veins. He is Bai's cousin. Even though he has committed a heinous crime, I hope you can punish him not too harshly for the sake of Bai." Lu Xuan's words surprised everyone. Lu Xuan was pleading for Lu Li. Lu Xuan was saying that Lu Li had committed a heinous crime. He said it so naturally that Lu Li almost thought he had done something wrong that would incur the wrath of God and the resentment of mankind. As a matter of fact, Lu Li didn't have any conflicts with Yang Xian, Lu Xuan, and Ji Mingtian since he came to the small battlefield. Instead, he was set up by them once. He, Jiang Qiling and Jiang, who were almost killed. Even if he hadn't done anything yet when he came to seek revenge. How could Lu Xuan say that he had committed a heinous crime? This was the second time he had met Yang Xian and Lu Xuan. After a moment of surprise, Yang Xian and the others soon came to their senses. Yang Xian said with a cold smile, "Young Master Sui, don't worry. Even though Lu Li has committed heinous crimes, we will not go too far. We will only punish him a little bit. After all, he is a disciple of the Lu family, and he has the blood of the Lu family in his veins. We must show respect to the Lu family." There were two young masters behind Yang Xian who knew how to play along. One of them had an idea and said, "I don't agree with young Master Xian and young Master Xuan. Lu Li has colluded with alien races. This is a heinous crime. He should be executed as a warning to others." "That's right," the other young master shouted. "Lu Li colluded with the 4 alien races to murder Lady Ji and Lady Dai Feiyu. Luckily, the 2 young ladies had materials to build teleportation formations with them. Otherwise, they and those from the Samsara Palace and the Pavilion of Blossoms would have been killed." Yes, someone from the Samsara Palace reacted quickly and added, "Lu Li colluded with the 4 alien races to kill Lady Ji and take her quasi-relic. If we hadn't run away, we would all be dead now." Lu Li's plot failed, and he put on a show with the 4 alien races. He defeated the 4 alien races alone. Who would believe this? An imperishable realm martial artist could defeat the allied forces of the 4 races? This is the biggest joke in the world. It's obvious that he's allied with the 4 races. Yes, kill this fiend. The group of people chimed in one after another and actually came up with a big lie. Moreover, it was a very good one. It sounded reasonable, and no one could refute it. If an outsider were here, he would think Lu Li was colluding with the 4 alien races. A group of people lied through their teeth, and they spoke in such a righteous manner that Dai Feiyu felt embarrassed and turned her face away. On the other hand, Yang Xian, Lu Xuan, and Ji Mingtian looked calm, as if they had accepted it without any shame. It was as if they all believed it was the truth. Ha ha! Lu Li couldn't even stand up under the gravity. But now he was laughing into the sky. He laughed so hard that he was in tears. He had seen many shameless people in his life, but this was the first time he had seen someone as shameless as Lu Li. He understood why they were doing this. Everyone had a jade talisman hanging on their waist. The jade talisman contained a miraculous inhibition formation that could record what was happening nearby. At the moment, everyone took out their jade talismans just to record this scene. They wanted the outside world to know that killing or punishing Lu Li was just and justifiable. Lu Renhuang never showed up, and Lu Zhengyang was still alive. These people didn't have the courage to kill Lu Li without a good reason. They wanted a fig leaf. Even if this fig leaf could not stand scrutiny, at least they had reason. After Lu Li laughed, he turned to Ji Ming Tian and said, "Lady Ji, God must have been blind to give you such a perfect body. Lu Li, have never seen a woman as vicious as you. Marrying you is no different from marrying a viper or a ghost in human skin." With that said, Lu Li ignored Ji Ming Tian. He turned to Dai Fei Yu and said, "Dai Fei Yu, as far as I know, you are an innocent, pretty, and adorable girl. I don't believe that you are in cahoots with them. You are an accomplice to the evildoer. You have disappointed me." Lu Li turned to Yang Xian and said, "Yang Xian of the Hades Society? I don't think I have a grudge against you. Why do you have to plot against me over and over again? Even if you can kill me this time, aren't you afraid that my grandpa will wake up and my father will turn the Hades Society upside down? And my two dear cousins?" In the end, Lu Li turned to Lu Xuan and Lu Enai. He ignored Lu Enai and said to Lu Enai, "Lu Xuan, I have to say that you're the most terrifying opponent I have ever met. Your wisdom is unparalleled. It should be the Lu family's fortune to have a disciple like you. It is a pity that you have used your intelligence in the wrong place. Now that I have left the Lu family, I will never go back. Therefore, I am not a threat to your position. The position of family patriarch. I don't want it. Why do you want to kill me over and over again? At the end of the day, we share the same blood. You have murdered your own cousin. How are you going to answer to the ancestors of the Lu family after you die?" With that said, Lu Li looked at everyone. Dai Fei Yu was even more ashamed. As for Lu Xuan, Lu Enai, Ji Ming Tian, and Yang Xian, they were still expressionless, as if Lu Li had just farted. Ji Ming Tian sighed and said, "Lu Li, how can you still be so stubborn at this point? Admit your mistake honestly, and we'll let you go. As long as you can stop before it's too late and apologize to the demon-slaying hall, we will not make things difficult for you. Right?" Yang Xian bellowed. He took out a sword, pointed at Lu Li, and said, "Lu Li, you have two choices. First, kowtow and admit your mistake. Then, go to the demon-slaying hall and apologize. Then, we will let you go. Otherwise, we will have to do justice." Lu Xuan shook his head and lowered his head. Disappointment was written all over his face. He said nothing, just like an old monk in meditation. The warriors behind Yang Xian were filled with killing intent. As a matter of fact, everyone knew that Lu Li would not kowtow, or else he wouldn't have killed patriarchs of the Lu family at the Mystic Armor City. Therefore, they were ready to take action secretly. Lu Li laughed out of anger. He didn't waste any more words. He put on a ferocious smile, and killing intent surged out from him. He was like a shepherd dog surrounded by a pack of wolves, sending chills down everyone's spine. Ha ha ha. Right at that moment, someone burst into laughter. Ji Ming Tian and the others were on high alert. Lu Xuan suddenly opened his eyes. His eyes were as cold as a glacier that had existed for thousands of years. A man in white flew over. It was a young man with a huge sword on his back. He was handsome, dignified, and transcendent like an immortal. Yi Luo of the Tumulus of Universe had come at this critical moment. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.